Chapter 1. Pa. The basketball in Xiao Chen's hand was slapped away. What followed was a burst of cheers from the audience. However, the cheers were extremely harsh in Xiao Chen's ears. Block. This almost humiliating way of stealing the ball made Xiao Chen stare at Qin Jinping and gasp for breath. Inner force. Qin Jinping actually used inner force privately. Under normal circumstances, martial artists would not use inner force. If it was used in an ordinary friendly basketball match, what was the point? Unless the opponent took the initiative to provoke them, martial artists generally disdained to use inner force to bully others. Xiao Chen's face was gloomy as he looked at Qin Jinping, who passed by him and took the basketball away. He even forgot about his swollen palm. This was his former underling. How dare he use underhanded tricks on me in a basketball match? Beep. Accompanied by the whistle, there was another cheer outside the court. Qin Jinping had successfully shot the ball at the last moment. Inner force again. Only Xiao Chen could see that at such a long distance, with Qin Jinping's strength, he had to use inner force to shoot the ball successfully. Qin Jinping. You're good. Even though Xiao Chen's psychological quality was very strong, the consecutive blows still made his chest heave up and down. He was furious. What are you looking at? Do you still think you're the Xiao Chen from before? You've been kicked out of your family. Instead of finding a place to hide, you actually ran to the court to be abused. Do you really think you're a basketball god? If I hadn't been playing infernal affairs and bribed my teammates to deliberately lose to you, who do you think you are? Qin Jinping looked at Xiao Chen with ridicule. His gaze was high and mighty, as if he was looking at an ant. Fake. No wonder he lost so badly. I thought Xiao Chen was really a basketball god. Turned out to be fake. Xiao Chen's teammates seemed to understand something after listening to Qin Jinping's words and began to ridicule him. Scumbag, always playing fake. I was wondering why Xiao Chen's skills were so bad today. Qin Jinping intercepted the ball consecutively. He's really trash. If it were in the past, these people really wouldn't dare to do anything to Xiao Chen. Although Xiao Chen was currently studying in an aristocratic school and these people's families were also rich or noble, compared to the Xiao family, one of the four major families in Songning City, it was a world of difference. However, now that Xiao Chen had been kicked out of the Xiao family and was a thorn in the side of the Qing family, the head of the four major families, these people followed suit regardless of whether what Qin Jinping said was true or false. Xiao Chen looked coldly at the people on the court, but he had nothing to say. Should I tell them that Qin Jinping's skills were actually not as good as mine and that he could only win because he used inner force? But who would believe it? How many of these people knew about inner force? Even if they knew, who could stand up for him at this moment? He was no longer the young master of the Xiao family, the son of the young master of the Xiao family. The younger brother of the past had stepped on his head. Ha? Xiao Chen shook his head. What? Why was he still kicked out of the Xiao family? Was it because he couldn't practice inner force? But who could see the hard work that Xiao Chen had put in all these years since he was young? Xiao Chen was the only son of the young master of the Xiao family, Xiao Feng. But because of his physique, he couldn't practice inner force. All these years, Xiao Chen had withstood huge pressure. The successors of the four major families were all outstanding martial artists. Only martial artists could suppress the heroes and push a family to a higher level. In front of others, Xiao Chen had no choice but to act like a hedonistic young master, spending money like it was dirt. Only by doing so could he protect himself. A useless successor was something that the other three major clans and 5 minor clans would be happy to see. Without the ability to protect himself, he had to make others think that he was harmless to them. When he was young, he practiced hard every day for more than 10 years. Every night when it was quiet, the sound of training could be heard in the basement of the Xiao family's Xiao Chen room. However, Xiao Chen's hard work didn't get rewarded by the heavens. His father went missing, he was kicked out of the family, and the Qing family broke off the engagement. And he was still a good-for-nothing who couldn't protect himself. Xiao Chen took a deep breath. No matter whether he acted harmless in the past or not, at this moment, the old master of the Qing family hated him. There were many people who threw stones at him when he was down. The basketball game ended and the people around him had already dispersed. The people who supported the Qin family surrounded Qin Jinping and went to celebrate together. Xiao Chen. A nervous but pleasant voice appeared in front of Xiao Chen, accompanied by a beautiful figure. This was a young girl wearing a school uniform that was unusually plain, but all of this could not conceal her natural beauty. Kerlin? Xiao Chen looked at the girl in front of him, who was known as the commoner campus belle. Of course, she was also the target of Xiao Chen's pursuit and harassment in the past. Actually, speaking of which, Xiao Chen could be considered as Lin Ke's savior. Lin Kuo had been harassed by some ruffians in the alleyway behind the school, and coincidentally Xiao Chen, who was passing by, had seen it. Thus, he had instructed Qin Jinping to beat up those ruffians, and thus the scene of a hero saving the damsel in distress had played out. Originally, Lin was very grateful to Xiao Chen, but she didn't expect that the next day, Xiao Chen began to pursue Lin at school. Love letters and roses made Lin, who only wanted to study hard, collapse. Therefore she could only hide from Xiao Chen. Fortunately, Xiao Chen was only pretending to be a playboy, so he didn't do anything too excessive. However, when Lin took the initiative to look for him, it still made Xiao Chen a little surprised. I heard that you were expelled from your family, and your engagement was broken off. Lin's face was flushed. She stuttered, and her breathing was a little rushed. But, don't be sad and give up on yourself. You work hard now, study hard, and you can still be successful in the future. Then I can let you chase me? After saying this, Lin seemed to have exhausted all the strength in her body. Her forehead was also sweating, and her delicate face was full of redness. She lowered her head and didn't dare to look at Xiao Chen again. She turned around and ran away quickly. Looking at Lin, who was far away, Xiao Chen couldn't help but smile bitterly. While sighing at Lin's naivety and kindness, he couldn't help but sigh. All these years did I pretend to be a playboy quite well? Did she think that I would take things too hard because of this? However, what Xiao Chen didn't know was that in the school, there was already a small-scale rumor spreading. And Lin heard this rumor, so she plucked up the courage to look for Xiao Chen. To the simple and honest Lin Kuo, how much courage did she have to expend to say such words? Chapter 2. Xiao Chen touched his hungry stomach due to the strenuous exercise. He wanted to go to the school cafeteria to eat something, but Xiao Chen stopped as soon as he took a step. The food in the school cafeteria was more expensive. Xiao Chen was no longer the young master of the Xiao family. His bank card was frozen, and his sports car was driven away by the family. Xiao Chen's ears were still echoing with what his second uncle said at noon. You're no longer a member of the Xiao family. You've been kicked out of the Xiao family. Everything in the Xiao family no longer belongs to you. Are these words said by my own second uncle? Even if I've been kicked out of the Xiao family, there's no need to be so ruthless, right? At this moment, Xiao Chen seemed to understand something. Is this the so-called big family has no kinship? However, Xiao Chen didn't expect that this scene would appear in the Xiao family. He turned around and walked to the row of food stalls in front of the school gate. In the past, Xiao Chen disdained to come here to eat. The school's high-class restaurant was comparable to the culinary skills of a five-star hotel. Of course, the price was not cheap. It was just that the previous Xiao Chen had no concept of money. Classmate, what do you want to eat? The owner of the food stall greeted Xiao Chen enthusiastically. However, even if he was enthusiastic, Xiao Chen was confused by the dazzling fast food names in front of him. He had never eaten these strange things before. What is barbecued meat mixed with rice? Isn't barbecued meat a Western cuisine? How can it be mixed with rice? I'll have seafood fried noodles. Xiao Chen could only choose a food that looked familiar. Okay, wait a moment. It'll be ready soon. The owner responded and called the chef behind him to start working. Soon the fried noodles were served. Xiao Chen looked at the strange seafood fried noodles in front of him. The so-called seafood was just a few small pieces of shredded squid scattered on the noodles. This made Xiao Chen feel like he didn't know where to start. However, the taste seemed to be good. The hungry Xiao Chen couldn't care less. He picked up the chopsticks and began to stuff food into his mouth. Moreover, Xiao Chen was not really a playboy. It was just that he did not have the opportunity to eat these things in the past. Isn't this Xiao Chen? Why did you come to this roadside stall to eat? Is this the bad taste of rich people? An ear-piercing voice was heard. This voice was somewhat familiar. Xiao Chen immediately recognized it as Chao Yuliang's voice. Just like Xiao Chen and Qin Jinping, Chao Yuliang was a disciple of the 4 big families and 5 small families of Songning City. However, the Chao family and the Xiao family had always been at odds with each other, causing Chao Yuliang and Xiao Chen to often be at loggerheads with each other. However, Chao Yuliang was the same as Xiao Chen, a good-for-nothing young master who couldn't cultivate inner strength. After looking at Chao Yuliang coldly, Xiao Chen stood up and asked, "Boss, how much is it?" A wise man knew better than to fight when the odds were against him. Xiao Chen was kicked out of the family. Naturally, he didn't want to argue with Chao Yuliang anymore. Moreover, the purpose of Chao Yuliang coming here was probably to provoke him and humiliate him. Naturally, Xiao Chen wouldn't let him succeed. Seafood fried noodles, 10 yuan. The boss said. Okay. Xiao Chen reached for his wallet, but when his hand touched his pocket, his face suddenly changed. My wallet is gone. Did I lose it when I was playing basketball just now? What? Xiao Chen doesn't want to pay? Could it be that he is here to eat and dash? But it's no wonder. In the past, Qin Jinping paid the bill. Why don't I help you call him? Qiao Yuliang looked at Xiao Chen playfully and pretended to take out his phone. Young Master Xiao Chen wants to swipe his card. With Xiao Chen's identity, how can he bring cash when he goes out? One of Qiao Yuliang's followers said. Yeah, but unfortunately Xiao Chen, you can't swipe your diamond credit card here. Another follower said. Boss, I lost my wallet. Can I give it to you next time? Xiao Chen took a deep breath and warned himself in his heart. When a tiger falls to the plains, he will be bullied by dogs. Just ignore them. The boss saw Xiao Chen's embarrassed look. It seemed that he really had a difficult situation. His clothes didn't look like a person who cheated others to eat and drink. He thought that he didn't have much money anyway, so he said, "It's okay. I will give it to you next time." Boss, you can't do this. You are a scumbag who connives to eat and dash. Look at this brat, he's dressed like a dog. One look and I know he's a swindler. Qiao Yuliang blocked Xiao Chen's path. Yeah, boss. You can't condone this kind of person who eats and dashes. Think about it. If he doesn't pay for the meal, then we also say that we didn't bring money after the meal. Does it mean that we don't have to pay? Do you still want to do your business? Qiao Yuliang's followers also echoed this. The boss hesitated after hearing Qiao Yuliang and his followers' words. These people were obviously looking for trouble. If he really let Xiao Chen go, then they would probably have to eat a meal without paying. Then his business for the day would be in vain. Boss, I will pay his bill. A cold voice sounded. This voice made Xiao Chen's body tremble. It was Cheng Minjing, the eldest daughter of the Cheng family, the head of Songning's 4 major aristocratic families and 5 small aristocratic families. However, she also had another identity, which was Xiao Chen's fiancée. It should be said that she was his ex-fiancée. Minjing, although he used to be your fiancé, he has been kicked out of the Xiao family. How can you pay for him? Qiao Yuliang's face changed slightly. He didn't expect Cheng Minjing to cause trouble at this time. As Cheng Minjing's pursuer, this wasn't what he wanted to see. Of course, I'm not asking you to be unsympathetic, but if your Cheng family knows about this, Grandpa Cheng will definitely. Cheng Minjing didn't care about Qiao Yuliang at all. She took out a 100 yuan bill from her wallet and handed it to the boss. The boss didn't dare to say anything. He took the money. When he was about to give the change, he found that Cheng Minjing had turned around and left. Just give me the change, Yi Zichen said. Xiao Chen glanced at Cheng Minjing's back with a complicated expression. He shook his head self-deprecatingly. At this time he didn't care about Xiao Chen's self-esteem. No one treated him as Xiao Chen. He was just a target of ridicule. Then what else did he have to pretend to be? After removing the previous disguise, Xiao Chen was too lazy to pretend to Qiao Yuliang. Okay. The boss didn't think much about it. He directly handed the 90 yuan that he got back to Xiao Chen. Ha, you really can't be helped. You even want a woman's money? Xiao Chen, you are hopeless. If I were you, I would rather die. Qiao Yuliang's voice was very loud. Perhaps he wanted to deliberately let Cheng Minjing hear it. However, Cheng Minjing's footsteps were light. She didn't stop at all, as if she didn't hear it. Xiao Chen looked at Qiao Yuliang coldly. If you want to eat, sit down and eat. If you don't want to eat, get out of the way. A good dog doesn't block the way. What did you say? One of Qiao Yuliang's underlings jumped out and pointed at Xiao Chen. He was about to make a move. Forget it. There's no point in beating a drowning dog. Let him get lost. Qiao Yuliang waved his hand and took the lead to sit at a table on the side. He said, "Boss, give me a beef rice." His underlings also looked at Xiao Chen with disdain. Then they sat beside Qiao Yuliang. Xiao Chen had to admit that Qiao Yuliang was better than him in some aspects. At least he knew what the store's food was. Looking at Xiao Chen's back as he left, Qiao Yuliang's eyes flashed with a hint of ruthlessness. However, it was quickly concealed. Fight with me? Let's see how you can fight with me now. Chapter 3. Out of the food stall, Xiao Chen's face showed a trace of confusion. Originally, Xiao Chen thought that even if his efforts were not rewarded, he would still be the heir of the Xiao family. As long as he and Cheng Minjing got married and had children, the children would be able to embark on the path of martial arts cultivation, and the Xiao family would not be considered as broken. After all, the lifespan of a martial artist was very long, and Xiao Chen's father, Xiao Feng, was a rare genius among the younger generation. When his grandson grew up, he could still wait. Therefore, after Xiao Chen had a plan, he began to disguise himself as an ignorant and incompetent playboy, flirting with girls, fighting for wealth, and indulging in debauchery. Except for the people within the Xiao family, Xiao Chen succeeded in deceiving everyone. No one would have thought that Xiao Chen would be a madman who forced himself to cultivate for more than 10 years. However, unexpectedly, his father suddenly disappeared without a trace, and Qing Minjing's uncle, the most promising member of the younger generation of the Qing family, also disappeared in the trial team led by his father. News came from the outside world that Xiao Chen's father, Xiao Feng, had caused the entire trial team to perish due to a mistake in decision-making, burying the lives of the entire trial team. Old Master Qing was furious, and under the pressure of the Xiao family, Xiao Chen was driven out of the family in confusion. The Qing family was an ancient martial arts family, the head of the 4 big and 5 small families in Songning City. In the entire northwest region they were one of the best. Of course, there were only a few ancient martial arts families in the entire Xia kingdom. These families in the local areas were transcendent existences, established by martial arts and passed down for hundreds of years. As for families like the Xiao family, the Qin family, and the Chao family, they had only risen in the past few decades. Although they also practiced martial arts, their heritage could not be compared to the Qing family. There were a total of 9 families in Songning City, but the rankings were not fixed. The families would be re-ranked according to the comprehensive strength of each family in a regular family meeting. However, other families would have more or less changes, but the Qing family had never changed. Therefore, being able to unite with the Qing family by marriage meant that a family would soar. The Xiao family wanted it, so did the Chao family. However, because Xiao Chen's father, Xiao Feng, and Qing Minjing's father, Qing Zhenfei, grew up together and studied under the same master, the engagement between Xiao Chen and Qing Minjing was set early. "Little brother, do you want to take a taxi?" While Xiao Chen was hesitating, a taxi stopped beside Xiao Chen. The driver probably saw Xiao Chen standing on the street like a fool, so he thought he was waiting for a taxi. Xiao Chen was slightly stunned, but he still nodded. With his current mood, he did not want to continue to stay in school. Staying in school would only lead to more ridicule. Xiao Chen also wanted to be alone and think about his future. Without his family and father, Xiao Chen had to replan his life. Just find a quiet place. Xiao Chen opened the door and got in the car. "A quiet place? Little brother, do you have something on your mind?" The taxi driver was stunned and asked. "Well, just find a place without people." Xiao Chen did not want to talk much, so he just nodded. The taxi driver did not ask anything more. He started the car and left the food stall. What Xiao Chen did not know was that shortly after the taxi left, a black Audi car followed. However, the model of the Audi was a 6L, which was relatively ordinary. If one did not have professional anti-reconnaissance abilities, it would be impossible to discover it. The taxi stopped at the Songlong Mountain cliff mouth. This was a tourist attraction that had not been developed yet. After being bought by a company, it was going to be developed in the next 2 years, but now it was a deserted place. In the summer there were couples who came here to have an affair, but now it was autumn. The cliff mouth was very windy, so it was deserted. However, this place was just right for Xiao Chen. He could calm down and feel the cold wind to clear his mind. There were too many things that happened today. He was kicked out of the family. Before he could think too much about it, he had to participate in the previously agreed friendly basketball match. Xiao Chen paid the taxi fare and sat on the edge of the cliff mouth. He looked at the bottomless cliff and fell into deep thought. What should I do in the future? Without internal energy, Xiao Chen was no different from an ordinary person. Even when he was kicked out of the Xiao family, he was even worse than an ordinary person. It turned out that I was indeed a useless young master. In the past, Xiao Chen thought that he was very smart and had deceived everyone. But now, after losing everything, Xiao Chen realized that he was just a little smart. Just as Xiao Chen fell into deep thought, suddenly, someone kicked Xiao Chen's back. F***ck. Xiao Chen cursed. His body flew directly off the cliff. Who the F***ck is so wicked? The whistling wind in his ears and the bottomless cliff made Xiao Chen's forehead instantly break out in a cold sweat. Am I going to die? Xiao Chen's eyes flashed a hint of unwillingness. Who is it that wants to kill me? The person who pushed me had internal energy. Xiao Chen could feel this. If the other party didn't use internal energy, Xiao Chen wouldn't have fallen off the cliff so easily. The place where he was sitting was more than 2 meters away from the cliff. An ordinary person could only push him a little, but it was impossible to push him off the cliff. Although Xiao Chen didn't have internal energy all these years, his body was much stronger than ordinary people. After all, this was the result of training every night. However, these had become meaningless. Looking at the bottom of the cliff that was getting closer and closer, Xiaochen closed his eyes helplessly. Boom! A loud noise sounded. Xiaochen only felt that his internal organs were about to be shattered. Then he lost consciousness. After an unknown period of time, suddenly, there was a sound that made Xiaochen's hair stand on end. This was because this sound didn't come from Xiaochen's ears, but from Xiaochen's head. Wake up, wake up. This voice seemed to be circling in Xiaochen's head. Xiaochen was shocked and jumped up subconsciously. Oh, who is it? Xiaochen even forgot that he fell from the cliff. He didn't have time to think about why he didn't fall to his death. Instead, he looked around trying to find the source of the voice. It's me. The somewhat old voice sounded again. Xiaochen's face suddenly showed a horrified expression. Although Xiaochen wasn't a timid person, as a person who practiced martial arts, he didn't know how many dead people he had seen. However, the scene in front of him had already exceeded the normal worry. Who are you? Where are you? Xiaochen asked in a hurry. I'm in your body. The voice said word by word. Are you kidding? Xiaochen said subconsciously. However, he still lowered his head and looked at his body to see if there was anything strange. Do you think I look like I'm joking? I'm a soul and I'm now in your body. The voice said indifferently. Soul? My body? Possession. Possession? After Xiaochen spat out the word possession, his face turned ashen. Chapter 4. Xiaochen couldn't help but be afraid. Although he hadn't experienced possession, he had more or less heard of it. Now that a soul had entered his body, if it wasn't for possession, then what was it? Possession. The voice was slightly stunned and then it laughed with some disdain. That's a method used by the devil sect. A body that is possessed is not the most suitable. It will cause a lot of trouble in the future. I'm just an independent existence that resides in your body. Phew. Xiaochen breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed that this soul really wasn't going to possess him. Otherwise, why would it explain so much about possession? Moreover, after Xiaochen calmed down, he realized that he still had independent consciousness. So he took a deep breath and asked, Then who are you, soul? Why did you choose to reside in my body? It's meaningless for you to know who I am for the time being. As for why I am residing in your body, it's because your physique is very similar to mine. When you jumped off the cliff, it happened to touch my soul, so I am residing in your body. The voice explained faintly. If *CK physique is similar? You still want to possess me? Xiaochen was shocked and said angrily. However, he sighed sorrowfully. Xiaochen didn't die after falling off the cliff, but am I going to be possessed and die? Xiaochen, don't be agitated. The voice sounded again, but this time with a somewhat funny tone. You didn't die after jumping off the cliff. You have to thank me. If I didn't enter your body in mid-air, you would have fallen into a meat patty by now. You? How do you know my name? You can read minds? Xiaochen was shocked and asked. Don't forget that I'm in your body. You can communicate with me as long as you think about it in your mind. There's no need to say it out loud. The voice continued, As for possession, I'm really not interested. Although your body is very similar to mine, it's only similar. Moreover, after I possess you, I might lose my own thoughts, or in other words, our thoughts will merge and become a new person. So that's how it is. In that case, thank you for saving my life. For some reason, perhaps because this soul was also in Xiaochen's body, his words made Xiaochen feel particularly sincere, as if he was not lying to him. There's no need to thank me for saving your life. I didn't save you for nothing. That voice did not care about Xiaochen's gratitude. I saved you for myself. I have some unfulfilled wishes when I was alive, and I want you to help me fulfill them. Why? Xiaochen's heart stirred. Sure enough, there was something going on. I knew it. You wouldn't be so kind as to save me. It turns out that you already had a plan. Oh, your father went missing, you were chased out of the family, your fiancé broke off the engagement, and you were bullied by your former lackey. It seems like you've had quite a miserable life. The voice suddenly said with a mocking tone. Holy shit. You old bastard, you peeped at my privacy. Xiaochen was completely enraged. He had an urge to hit someone, but if he raised his fist, who would he hit? Was he going to hit himself? Wasn't that a moron? I was just casually looking. Don't worry, I don't have any bad interests. I just looked at my recent memories. The voice said indifferently, however, you have such a good physique. You were actually bullied like this. Dieske, it's really sad. Old thing, what are you trying to say? Xiaochen was so angry that he gritted his teeth, but he couldn't do anything to this soul. He was in his own body so he couldn't hit him. Scolding him, it seemed that this old thing was thick-skinned. Even if he scolded him, he wouldn't react. Do you want to become stronger? The voice put away the previous mockery and asked temptingly. After Xiao Chen scolded him, he suddenly thought of the soul's words, such a good physique? Could it be that my physique is a good physique in his eyes? Xiao Chen wasn't stupid. Thinking of this, he asked tentatively, do you have a way to cultivate inner strength? No. The voice said very straightforwardly. Xiao Chen had an urge to go berserk. If not, why do you ask this? But maybe there is an alternative? One can still become a powerhouse without cultivating inner strength? The voice answered his own question. You mean you have other cultivation methods but they can achieve the same effect as inner strength? Xiao Chen was slightly stunned and asked quickly. That's right. The voice said affirmatively, otherwise how can I let you help me fulfill my wish? Just based on your skills? Okay. As long as you can make me stronger in exchange I can help you fulfill your wish. Xiao Chen hesitated slightly and made a decision. He said affirmatively, but let me say this first. If you want me to do something dangerous, I won't do it. That's not up to you. My first wish is to not accept a disciple before I die. Xiao Chen, kowtow and acknowledge me as your master first. The voice laughed and was full of wretchedness. Acknowledge me as your master? Xiao Chen was stunned and immediately understood that he was tricked. I want to acknowledge you as my master. You're my master. Whatever you want me to do, I have to do it. How is this an exchange? When did I say it was an exchange? You said it yourself. The voice said, besides, one of my wishes is to accept a disciple. You? Xiao Chen's eyes widened. He was stunned and didn't know what to say. Well, to be honest, you are my disciple and the only successor of my bloodline. How can I let you push you into the fire pit? If you acknowledge me as your master, there are only benefits and no disadvantages. The voice laughed. Okay, then I agree. Xiao Chen thought about it. In fact, he had no other choice. If he wanted to become stronger, relying on this soul was the only choice. He hadn't cultivated inner strength for more than 10 years. If there were other ways he would have used them long ago. Okay, but I don't want to acknowledge you as my master first. Now that I can't come out of your body, you can't worship yourself. The voice was very satisfied with Xiao Chen's agreement. You can call me Master or Elder Heaven Ancestor in the future. Master, what should I do now? This cliff. How do I go back? Since Xiao Chen had accepted Elder Heaven Ancestor as his master, he naturally didn't have to worry about it. Go back, no hurry. Elder Heaven Ancestor said, it's been too long. The spiritual sense in my soul is very weak. I can temporarily replace your body and fly up the cliff, but that will use up all my remaining spiritual sense. After that, I will enter a dormant state. Chapter 5. Then what should I do if you go dormant? Xiao Chen was taken aback. However, he was secretly surprised. He could actually fly up the cliff? How high was this cliff? According to Xiao Chen's understanding, even if his father was a level 7 inner force expert, it would still be impossible for him to do this. It seemed that this master of his was really a powerful expert. It seemed that he hadn't recognized him in vain. Cultivate according to the method I taught you. The primordial qi that you cultivate, or what you call true qi, can replenish my soul and mental strength. The Elder Heaven Ancestor said, don't worry, I will wake up soon. However, this replenishment process is relatively slow. When you become a real cultivator and step into the threshold of the first level of the refinement stage, I will wake up. However, it is easy for me to wake up, but it is difficult for me to help you with this kind of thing again. Then how do I cultivate? Xiao Chen was confused and asked, also, what is primordial qi? The inner force that you mentioned is something that warriors cultivate, and primordial qi is something that we cultivators cultivate. The two are similar but different. Most people can cultivate to become warriors, but it is not the case for cultivators. You must have spiritual roots in your body to cultivate. The Elder Heaven Ancestor said, warriors train their bodies and cultivators train qi. I will teach you the mantra of qi training. You just need to cultivate according to the method written above. Although the Elder Heaven Ancestor's words sounded simple, Xiao Chen was extremely shocked. Cultivators? There are actually cultivators in existence? This was the first time he heard of this concept. However, thinking about it, with the Xiao family's heritage, it was normal that he didn't know about this. After all, the Elder Heaven Ancestor also said that cultivators must have spiritual roots, which was rare. Yes, Master. Xiao Chen was shocked and said respectfully. Although the elder heaven ancestor didn't say anything, Xiaochen suddenly felt as if something had intruded into his mind. In an instant, a large set of mantra mnemonics and cultivation methods appeared in Xiaochen's mind. Alright, I'm going to temporarily take over your body. As soon as the elder heaven ancestor finished speaking, Xiaochen was shocked to find that his body was no longer under his control. However, in addition to not being able to control his own body, Xiaochen discovered that he still had his own consciousness. In other words, he could think and see everything in front of him, but he couldn't control his own body. Elder heaven ancestor, is that you? Xiaochen asked in his mind. It's me. Your body is too weak. This will consume a lot of my soul force. Kid, you really know how to cause trouble for me. Such a high cliff, it's killing me. The elder heaven ancestor's words came out of Xiaochen's mouth. This tone was indescribably strange and awkward. If I didn't fall down, would you be able to enter my body? Xiaochen thought angrily. Hee, that's true. The elder heaven ancestor said, back then I was seriously injured and chased here. I fell off the cliff. I didn't expect that you, kid, were also thrown off the cliff. Master, seriously injured you and thrown off the cliff? What kind of expert is that? Xiaochen was a little surprised. Just when I was injured. Let's not talk about this. It's been so long I've almost forgotten about it. As the elder heaven ancestor said this, he suddenly took a deep breath and leaped. The whole body of Xiaochen actually flew straight up from the bottom of the cliff. Xiaochen looked at himself in amazement. What kind of martial arts was this? Could it be that cultivators were so much stronger than warriors? Or could it be that warriors could also be like this? Was it just that he didn't know? There are thousands of paths, but they all lead to the same destination. As Xiaochen was thinking about this, the elder heaven ancestor explained to him, don't underestimate warriors. Back then, the person who knocked me off the cliff was a warrior. Hiss. Xiaochen's feeling of being a cultivator was extinguished by the elder heaven ancestor with a basin of water. Of course, if I wasn't injured, killing him would be a piece of cake. Immediately after, the words of the elder heaven ancestor made Xiaochen not know whether to laugh or cry. After the elder heaven ancestor said this, Xiaochen's feet landed firmly on the cliff. Immediately after, Xiaochen found that he had regained control of his body. He could freely move his body. Master, you're really amazing. You actually managed to come up from such a high cliff. Xiaochen really couldn't imagine that he had actually jumped up by himself. However, this time the answer to Xiaochen was silence. Master? Xiaochen called out again. However, the answer to him was still silence. Xiaochen was slightly stunned. Only then did he remember what the elder heaven ancestor had said before. When he jumped up the cliff, his soul power would be exhausted and he would enter a dormant state. Only by cultivating his own vitality would he be able to replenish his energy and wake him up. Thinking of this, Xiaochen secretly made up his mind that he must achieve results in his cultivation as soon as possible. Standing on the cliff again, Xiaochen's thoughts were completely different from a few hours ago. A few hours ago, Xiaochen was dispirited and confused. He didn't know what to do in the future. However, a few hours later, Xiaochen was high-spirited and full of fighting spirit. However, when Xiaochen quickly ran down the cliff, he found something extremely depressing. Damn, there was actually no taxi here. Chapter 6. Have you heard? The good-for-nothing young master of the Xiao family committed suicide by jumping off a cliff. The news spread very fast on campus. At this moment, people who knew Xiaochen were talking about Xiaochen's affairs in groups of 3 or 5. You heard it too? Student B said after listening, hey, if it were me, I would also commit suicide. He was driven out of the family, and the engagement was broken off by the Qing family. He was also exposed in the basketball game that he spent money to fix the game. Who can bear such a blow? Yes, Xiaochen without the protection of his family is trash. No, he is worse than trash. Student C was the type of person who envied and hated the former Xiaochen. So at this moment, when he heard that Xiaochen was dead, he couldn't wait to curse more. So, Xiaochen committed suicide? As soon as Lin entered the classroom, she heard the students talking about Xiaochen. Listening carefully, it turned out to be the news of Xiaochen's suicide. Lin was shocked at that time and her pretty face suddenly became pale. Yes. One of Lin Ke's admirers did not notice her expression, and instead said to Lin Ke with a beaming smile, Ke, now that bastard Xiaochen is dead, you won't be harassed by him anymore, and you've also regained your freedom, otherwise no one would have dared to pursue you in the past. This admirer's name was Du Xiaonan. He was the young master of a medium-sized family. Usually he had a sense of superiority, but when he met Xiao Chen he could only walk around, so he felt suffocated. In the past, when Xiao Chen was there, Lin simply became Xiao Chen's private property. Even if he couldn't pursue her, he couldn't allow others to touch her. Who said that? Lin looked at Du Xiaonan in disbelief. She did not expect that Xiao Chen would commit suicide. Didn't she just enlighten him a few hours ago? How could he? I heard it was said by a taxi driver who sent him to the cliff. Du Xiaonan had only heard about it from someone else, but he really hoped that Xiao Chen would die, so he told Lin about what he had heard, adding oil to the fire. After Xiao Chen lost the basketball match, he went to the snack bar to eat, but he found that he didn't bring any money. In the end, Cheng Menjing had to pay for him. Xiao Chen's self-esteem probably suffered a great blow, so he hailed a taxi at the school gate and went to Songlong Mountain cliff mouth. In the end, the taxi driver watched as Xiao Chen jumped off the cliff. Du Xiaonan saw that Lin was trembling and her emotions were fluctuating. He thought that she was too happy because of Xiao Chen's death, so he didn't care. When Lin heard Du Xiaonan's words, her mind suddenly went blank. It was not that she didn't care, but she cared very much. In fact, she didn't hate Xiao Chen. On the contrary, she had always been secretly grateful to Xiao Chen for saving her. Although Xiao Chen had been pestering her afterward, he had never done anything excessive to embarrass her. This was his savior. Why couldn't he just let it go? Lin really couldn't figure it out. Even if he wasn't the young master of the Xiao family, couldn't he still get ahead through his own efforts? Lin, why aren't you talking? Aren't you too happy? After Du Xiaonan finished talking about Xiao Chen, he thought that Lin would be happy to chat with him for a while. However, he didn't expect that Lin returned to her own seat in a daze. She leaned on the table and didn't know what she was doing. Lin was crying. She really couldn't accept this fact. It wasn't that she liked Xiao Chen. It was just that she thought that Xiao Chen was a good person. I say, Du Xiaonan, is what you said true? Before Du Xiaonan could figure out what happened to Lin, another curious classmate came over and asked. Of course it's true. The taxi driver is soliciting customers at the gate of our school. He's here every day. If you don't believe me, you can ask him. Du Xiaonan said confidently as if he had seen it with his own eyes. Naturally, Cheng Menjing had also heard the news. However, her first reaction was not to follow the crowd's opinion like the others. Instead, she began to doubt the source of the news. Even if Xiao Chen had committed suicide, who had sent the news back? Moreover, a taxi driver, even if he sent Xiao Chen to the Songlong Mountain cliff mouth, would he still wait for Xiao Chen to walk up the cliff step by step and then leave? It wasn't a tourist attraction. There were no customers at all. Cheng Menjing didn't believe that the taxi driver was so idle. Of course, whether all this was true or false, it had little to do with Cheng Menjing. Cheng Menjing didn't like Xiao Chen. This was a playboy who didn't have much ability, but relied on the power of his family to do whatever he wanted outside. Xiao Chen didn't put his fiancée in his eyes at all. He pursued her sister in front of her, and recently launched an attack on the commoner campus belle. Even if Cheng Menjing didn't like Xiao Chen, she wouldn't feel comfortable seeing this. Menjing, are you thinking about Xiao Chen? The one who spoke was Cheng Menjing's best friend, Shen Jingxian. She was also one of the beautiful girls that Xiao Chen once harassed. Shen Jingxian didn't belong to the 4 big families or the 5 small families. Instead, she came from a mysterious family. She was also the target of many young masters in Songning City. However, Shen Jingxian was different from Cheng Menjing's cold personality. She was very kind to everyone, always making people feel like they were bathing in the spring breeze. What do you want him to do? Cheng Menjing naturally wouldn't admit it. Jingxian, you on the other hand have one less pursuer. It will be less troublesome in the future. I hope the rumors are false. Xiao Chen is already unlucky enough. Shen Jingxian didn't care about the pursuer. Instead, she really seemed to care about Xiao Chen. However, she was very kind to everyone. This was her personality, not because she had any special thoughts about Xiao Chen. Cheng Menjing knew Shen Jingshuan's personality. She shrugged. To be honest, she didn't want Xiao Chen to die like this. Although Cheng Menjing had always rejected the marriage between her and Xiao Chen, as Shen Jingxian said, Xiao Chen was already unlucky enough. If it weren't for her grandfather, Xiao Chen wouldn't be so down and out. Therefore, Cheng Menjing always felt that she owed Xiao Chen. But thinking about it, when did he put her, his fiancée, in his eyes? Shaking her head, Cheng Menjing flipped through the book and didn't think about these things for the time being. When Xiao Chen ran back to school, it was already time for school to end. It was more than 20 kilometers. Xiao Chen ran back in one breath. Fortunately, although he didn't cultivate internal energy, his body was extremely strong every night. Otherwise he would really run to death. Of course he could still hail a taxi if he was halfway there. However, he had used up more than half of the 90 yuan he had paid for the taxi. Xiao Chen didn't want to spend the rest of the money so easily. He was in urgent need of money right now. Walking into the school, what Xiao Chen didn't expect was that he actually met Qin Jinping. Chapter 7. However, Xiao Chen didn't have the intention to greet him. Now, Xiao Chen wanted to return to the dormitory as soon as possible, and then practice according to the mantra imprinted in his mind by the elder heaven ancestor. Strength, this was what Xiao Chen longed for all the time since he was a child. Now that it was right in front of him, how could he not be anxious? However, Xiao Chen didn't want to talk to Qin Jinping. However, when Qin Jinping saw Xiao Chen, his eyes widened in horror, as if he had seen a ghost. He pointed at Xiao Chen and said, Aren't you dead? Xiao Chen was shocked in his heart, but on the surface he looked at Qin Jinping calmly and said angrily, Qin Jinping, is there something wrong with your brain? You are the one who is dead. The matter of Xiao Chen being pushed off the cliff, only Xiao Chen himself and the person who did it behind the scenes knew. Could this person be Qin Jinping? However, Qin Jinping's inner force didn't seem to have such a high level of strength, right? Could it be that Qin Jinping also hid his strength? Xiao Chen wasn't stupid. From his father's disappearance to him being kicked out of the Xiao family, then being broken off the engagement, being murdered, and being pushed off the cliff, it seemed that there was an invisible hand behind all of this. If so many things were coincidences, then it was too much of a coincidence. However, to figure out all of this and find out who wanted to harm him behind the scenes, Xiao Chen must have the strength. Before he had the strength, he must continue to maintain his previous image, arrogant and easily angered, but he couldn't go too far. Qin Jinping didn't care that Xiao Chen scolded him, but he was still extremely shocked in his heart. The rumor that Xiao Chen committed suicide by jumping off the cliff had spread in the school, so when Qin Jinping saw Xiao Chen appearing in front of him, he was really shocked. However, after confirming that Xiao Chen was a person and not a ghost, Qin Jinping sneered and said, You are lucky that you didn't die. At this time, Chao Yuliang came over. When he saw Xiao Chen, his eyes flashed with a hint of surprise. Xiao Chen, a taxi driver, said that you went to Songlong Mountain Cliff Mouth to commit suicide. It seems that the rumor is false. Brother Liang. Qin Jinping had now followed the new boss and switched to the underling of Xiao Chen's former opponent. Xiao Chen just pretended to be pretentious in front of me and said that I was sick in the head. Brother Liang, why don't we beat him up? Forget it. There are many students in school now. Chao Yuliang waved his hand. Of course, it wasn't because there were many students after school, but because Chao Yuliang saw Cheng Menjing, Miss Cheng, walking over. Menjing. Chao Yuliang now had a sense of superiority in his heart. Cheng Menjing and Xiao Chen had broken off the engagement, so he could pursue Cheng Menjing justifiably. Cheng Menjing ignored Chao Yuliang. She saw Xiao Chen standing here, so she walked over. To be honest, Cheng Menjing didn't know what kind of mentality she had. Did she care about Xiao Chen? In the past, when Xiao Chen pursued Ke Lin and Shen Jingxian in front of her, Cheng Menjing wanted to strangle him. I am your fiancé after all. Have you ever given me face? However, Xiao Chen was down and out. When she heard that he committed suicide by jumping off the cliff, Cheng Menjing was a little worried and angry. Oh, I don't care about him. After all, he used to be my fiancé. If something happens to him, I'm afraid I'm also responsible. Who asked the Cheng family to break off the engagement? Cheng Menjing gave the answer in her heart. But on the surface she looked at Xiao Chen very coldly. I thought you really committed suicide. It's good that you're not dead. Otherwise, others will think that it was the Cheng family who forced you to die. After that, Cheng Menjing didn't stay. She quickly turned around and left. Chao Yuliang thought that Cheng Menjing despised Xiao Chen, so he quickly followed and tried to please her. Yeah, Menjing, if Xiao Chen died, it would also affect your reputation. If you want to die, at least wait. He died in a hurry. However, Cheng Menjing didn't even look at Chao Yuliang. She went straight to a limousine at the school gate. This was the car that was responsible for picking her up and dropping her off every day. Xiao Chen, take this money. Spend it sparingly. It was Shen Jingxian who spoke. She gave an envelope to Xiao Chen, smiled at him and turned to leave. Chao Yuliang's attention was on Cheng Menjing. Naturally, he didn't pay attention to this. As for Qin Jinping, although he also liked Shen Jingxian in his heart, it was because she was the target of his elder brother's pursuit. As a son of a concubine, Qin Jinping could only endure it. Otherwise, he wouldn't have fallen to the point of being a subordinate of Xiao Chen and Chao Yuliang. Xiao Chen held the envelope that still had Shen Jingshuan's warmth. He was slightly surprised, but he didn't think that Shen Jingshan liked him. Shen Jingshan could be said to be the common lover of these aristocrats. Because she was so kind to everyone and often participated in some public welfare and charity activities, it was not a big deal to give a sum of money to Xiao Chen. Moreover, Xiao Chen wouldn't believe that Qing Menjing didn't incite Qing Menjing in this matter. At that time, only Qing Menjing knew that he didn't have the money to pay for the noodles. Chao Yuliang definitely wouldn't let Shen Jingshan give him money. Xiao Chen put away the money. Although it wasn't a lot, it was enough for him to use for a while. At the very least, the problem of food and clothing was solved. It seemed that his ex-fiancée's heart was also quite kind, but her usual indifference covered her kindness. Especially when she was with Shen Jingshan, it couldn't highlight anything about Qing Menjing. But now that he thought about it, if it wasn't so, they wouldn't have become such good girlfriends. Although he got a sum of money, Xiao Chen wasn't very happy. He thought that the person who pushed him was Qin Jinping, but listening to Chao Yuliang, the whole school knew about this matter. Was it the taxi driver who said it? Who wants to harm me? In Xiao Chen's opinion, the taxi driver was most likely an excuse. Perhaps the source of the rumor came from the person who pushed him down the cliff. Or this taxi driver was arranged by him. Otherwise, why would he take the initiative to appear in front of me and take me to Songlong Mountain cliff mouth? Of course, it could also be a coincidence, but the person who pushed me down the cliff must be the person who spread the rumor. However, it was too difficult to find the source of the rumor on campus. He could only take it step by step. First, he would improve his strength and then slowly find the behind-the-scenes manipulator. Of course, what puzzled Xiao Chen the most was that he was already so down and out. From his usual performance, he was completely a prodigal son who had no ability to survive. Why did this person want to cut the weeds and eliminate the roots? What good would it do him if he killed me? Xiao Chen walked all the way back to his dormitory. Xiao Chen had turned a blind eye to the fingers of other people on the way. These people were probably here to see his resurrection. The speed of the rumor was really fast. Chapter 8. Dormitory. Xiao Chen had a separate dormitory in the school, but Xiao Chen had only stayed there a few times in the past 3 years. The furniture inside was covered with a thick layer of dust. Fortunately, there was a dormitory. Otherwise, Xiao Chen would probably have to sleep on the streets. The dormitory's fees were paid when he entered the school, so Xiao Chen didn't have to worry about it. Xiao Chen didn't care about the dust on the furniture. He directly sat on the bed with his legs crossed, ready to start practicing the mantra that Elder Heaven Ancestor had given him. After all, he had been longing for strength for too long. Now that there was a chance to turn things around, Xiao Chen definitely couldn't wait. After sitting down, Xiao Chen began to recall the mantra that Elder Heaven Ancestor had passed to him. Xiao Chen didn't know how Elder Heaven Ancestor had passed it to him, but when he recalled, a sheepskin scroll that recorded the mantra suddenly appeared in his mind. This sheepskin scroll was vivid in his mind, as if Xiao Chen had seen it himself. It should be the memory of Elder Heaven Ancestor, but he didn't know why it had been transmitted to Xiao Chen's mind. Decisive battle to turn fortune into heaven's snatch? What kind of lousy name was this? It was so strange. However, Xiao Chen didn't care. Generally, very powerful mantra had very strange names. For example, he had read a biographical novel called School Bell's Personal Expert on his mobile phone. In it, there was a Master Lin who practiced the art of dragon mastery. Look, what a crappy name. However, that mental cultivation method was extremely powerful. Thinking about it, this decisive battle, turning fortune into heaven seizing, should also be very powerful. Since it could even be called a decisive battle, it should be quite powerful. The turning fortune into heaven seizing of the decisive battle should be an even more powerful existence, just like how a horse would break through the clouds and trample through the universe. Thinking up to here, Xiao Chen began to cultivate according to the mantra on the decisive battle against heaven seizing fate. Although this cultivation method was different from the body forging when cultivating inner strength, Xiao Chen was very familiar with the acupuncture points and meridians of the human body since he had been cultivating inner strength since young. Although Xiao Chen felt that this decisive battle to turn fortune into heaven's snatch was a little strange, Xiao Chen had never been in contact with such things, so he braced himself and continued to practice. According to the information left in Xiao Chen's mind by the Elder Heaven Ancestor, if one wanted to become a cultivator, the first step was to sense the inner qi in his body. After forming the sense of qi according to the order of the mantra, let this sense of qi, which was the so-called primordial qi, run back and forth in the meridians of the body. As long as it could be successfully run, it was equivalent to setting foot on the threshold of cultivation. Everything was difficult at the beginning, but for an obsessive-compulsive madman like Xiao Qin, it was nothing at all. How boring was it in the eyes of ordinary people to repeatedly run the mantra to produce the sense of qi in the body? But for Xiao Qin, who had been training his inner strength in the basement for more than 10 years, it was nothing at all. Over and over again Xiao Qin ran the mantra tirelessly. Although there was no feeling in his body, Xiao Qin felt that the elder heaven ancestor would not deceive him, so he still forced himself to run the mantra over and over again. 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock. Although Xiao Qin could run the mantra tirelessly over and over again, at this moment he more or less doubted whether this decisive battle to turn fortune into heaven's snatch was suitable for him to practice. There was no reaction for so long. Was it because his aptitude was too poor, or was there a problem with his cultivation method? If he wanted to cultivate, did he have to go to a place with abundant qi of heaven and earth? However, just as Xiao Qin was wondering, suddenly Xiao Qin felt a slight chill in his chest. Then he clearly felt that there was a small stream of qi that began to spread from his chest to his whole body along the meridians in his body. As Xiao Qin ran the mantra, the stream of qi became bigger and bigger. At this moment, Xiao Qin wanted to exclaim in surprise. He had actually successfully cultivated the sense of qi. Didn't this mean that he was about to become a cultivator? Thinking of this, Xiao Qin gritted his teeth and continued to quickly run the mantra, making the stream of qi in his body more and more. It began to circulate around the meridians in his body. As the vitality in Xiao Qin's body increased, the vitality began to flow through the meridians in his body. This caused Xiao Qin to cry out in pain. This was the first time that vitality was flowing through the meridians. This kind of feeling was heart-wrenching, but Xiao Qin did not stop. Ever since he was young, he only believed in one sentence. That was, only by enduring the most bitter hardships can one rise above others. If it wasn't for the bone-chilling cold, how could there be the fragrance of plum blossoms? This was also the reason why Xiao Qin had been training in the basement for more than 10 years. However, sometimes, no matter how hard he worked, the materials were not right. An iron rod could be ground into a needle, but a wooden rod could not. Xiao Qin's physique was not good enough. No matter how much he trained, he could not cultivate inner strength. Therefore, when the vitality was produced, Xiao Qin would be so excited. Even if it was extremely painful, he would grit his teeth and persist in this hard-won success. Finally, under Xiao Qin's forceful cultivation, every meridian in his body was filled with vitality. This vitality began to circulate continuously in Xiao Qin's meridians, one round after another. It was unknown when it started, but Xiao Qin discovered that the pain of the meridians tearing no longer existed. Instead, it was replaced by a warm and comfortable feeling. While this vitality was circulating in the meridians, it also seemed to be nourishing them. After an unknown period of time, the sky turned white. Xiao Qin felt that the vitality circulating in his body suddenly stopped, and then it quickly surged towards his dantian. In an instant, all the vitality continuously surged into Xiao Qin's dantian. Xiao Qin only felt that his dantian was about to explode. This vitality was constantly being compressed in his dantian, and Xiao Qin's face also turned red. There wouldn't be a problem, right? Xiao Qin clenched his teeth, but he didn't know what to do. He wanted to stop the circulation of the mantra, but he didn't dare to casually stop. It wasn't easy to cultivate the sense of qi, and it had even formed a cycle. If he were to give up just like that, Xiao Qin wouldn't be willing. This was the strength that he had been yearning for day and night for more than a decade. Boom! Xiao Qin only felt his body suddenly shake, and it was as if something in his body had broken through. Although there was a kind of pain from the vibration, there was also a kind of pleasure that had been suppressed for a long time and was suddenly released. In this situation, Xiao Qin had no choice but to stop the circulation of the mantra. He had already cultivated until it exploded. If he didn't stop, who knew what else would happen in a while? Strength was important, but he also needed to be alive to have it. After stopping the circulation of the mantra, Xiao Qin quickly checked his body to see if there were any problems with his body. However, before Xiao Qin started checking, there was a sudden sound in his ear, and it shocked Xiao Qin. Chapter 9. Xiao Qin, not bad. You've broken through to the first level of qi refinement so quickly? I thought you'd need a few days. The sudden voice in the quiet morning scared Xiao Qin so much that he almost exploded. It was the voice of the elder heaven ancestor. When Xiao Qin heard it clearly, he breathed a sigh of relief. I say, elder heaven ancestor, can you not be so surprised? Don't you know that you can scare people to death when you speak so suddenly? Also, don't call me Xiao Qin, it sounds like a eunuch. Then next time I'll remind you that I'm going to speak? The Elder Heaven Ancestor asked jokingly. Xiao Qin, what's the difference? Xiao Qin was speechless. You're reminding me, but you're still talking to me? But then again, the Elder Heaven Ancestor could only communicate with me through words. What else could I do? As for how the Elder Heaven Ancestor addressed me, no one else could hear it, so I'll just let it be. I didn't expect your vital energy to be so pure. You've just broken through to the first level of Qi refinement, and you're already able to wake me up. The Elder Heaven Ancestor was a little surprised. But then he suddenly exclaimed, that's not right. Kid, are you practicing the mantra I gave you? Your Yuan Qi is a little different from my Yuan Qi in the past. Of course it's different. How did you wake up? Xiao Qin was a little surprised. I can use it. I'm also curious why I can use it, but I'm sure it's not. The Elder Heaven Ancestor said with certainty, the vital energy in your body is definitely different from mine. Are you sure you're practicing the mantra I gave you? Isn't that obvious? Xiao Qin rolled his eyes. If I had other mantras, I would have practiced them long ago. Why would I be pushed off a cliff? What I'm cultivating is definitely the decisive battle fortune seizing heaven technique that you gave me. What? The Elder Heaven Ancestor said, visibly taken aback. What do you mean by good fortune seized by the heavens? What's that? The mantra that you transmitted to my mind, Xiao Qin said. The Elder Heaven Ancestor almost burst out laughing. What decisive battle? That's called the Heaven's Fortune Battle Art. It's a mantra, not a decisive battle. Xiao Qin, are you blind? Heaven-stealing fortune battle art? Xiao Qin was stunned. He carefully looked at it in his mind. That Ju was probably Ju. It was just that these two words were too similar. They were only one stroke apart. Xiao Qin's first impression was the strongest, and he saw it as decisive battle, so he had always treated it as Ju. In other words, this word was read backwards? Xiao Qin, don't you know that these mantras are from ancient texts? You have to read them from right to left. The Elder Heaven Ancestor said helplessly. How could there be such a strange name? Decisive battle fortune seizing heaven technique. This? Old Sky, may I ask if every line of the mental cultivation method mnemonic chant is read from right to left as well? Xiao Qin's heart trembled as he hurriedly asked. Yes. When the Elder Heaven Ancestor said this, his tone suddenly changed. I say, don't tell me you cultivated from left to right? Yes. Xiao Qin felt like crying. Damn, what was going on? No one had ever told him that this mantra had to be read from right to left. This sentence took up one line, and each mantra didn't exceed one line. That was why when Xiao Qin read it, he didn't notice anything wrong and continued to cultivate. However, the Elder Heaven Ancestor told him that he cultivated it backwards. Then how did you cultivate it? The Elder Heaven Ancestor was in disbelief. Wasn't this too much of a genius? If I didn't cultivate it, how did you wake up? Xiao Qin was a little anxious. I say, Elder Heaven Ancestor, aren't you too much of a scammer? Couldn't you have said it first before fainting? Now that I cultivated it backwards, there's no harm, right? How would I know? The Elder Heaven Ancestor's voice was a little strange. Who would have thought that you could cultivate it backwards? This is the first time I've heard of this. Besides, don't you understand the general knowledge of ancient texts? Then what should I do now? Should I cultivate it backwards? Xiao Qin asked with a bitter smile. That's absolutely not possible. The Elder Heaven Ancestor immediately said. Every cultivator can only cultivate one mantra, and they must stick to one until the end. If they change their mantra midway, then at best they won't be able to cultivate both mantras. At worst they will go mad and become a cripple. So, if you can cultivate it backwards, then continue to cultivate it. I don't know how far you can go. So you're saying that I won't be able to become a top expert in the future? After hearing this, Xiao Qin's heart tightened. He was a little unwilling. A good opportunity was right in front of him, but he wasted it. This was really F***ed up. That's hard to say. But, since you can cultivate it backwards, I remember something. The Elder Heaven Ancestor said. What is it? Xiao Qin asked. A long time ago, when I was young and had just entered the sect, my master said something very strange when he passed the Heaven's Stolen Fortune Battle Art to me. Elder Sky seemed to be reminiscing as he said with some emotion. He told me that the Heaven's Stolen Fortune Battle Art can be cultivated in reverse, but he said to me that the Heaven's Stolen Fortune Battle Art can be cultivated in reverse? Xiao Qin's heart moved, but he immediately shook his head. This was too ridiculous. Elder Heaven Ancestor, are you comforting me? It's not really comforting. Maybe cultivating like this is the right thing to do? The Elder Heaven Ancestor was a little confused. But no matter what, you are now a true first-level refinement expert. First-level refinement? What level is that? Xiao Chen asked. Generally speaking, the strength of a level 1 refinement stage expert is equivalent to a level 1 inner force expert. Elder Sky said. What? Xiao Chen was shocked. Elder Heaven Ancestor, you mean to say that after one night of cultivation, I am equivalent to first-level internal force expert? Not equal, but approximately equal. The Elder Heaven Ancestor said. In other words, you are still a little bit weaker than first-level internal force expert? Xiao Chen said. After all, in one night, he had caught up with the other person's cultivation for so long. I say, Xiao Chen, when will you change your mind? I've already told you that we are cultivators, so we are stronger than martial artists. Right now, your strength is similar to that of a stage 1 inner force martial artist, but you have the ability to cast spells that martial artists don't have. Spells? Xiao Chen laughed dryly. It wasn't a matter of changing his mindset. It was just that it was too easy to reach the first stage of the Qi refinement stage. Xiao Chen subconsciously felt that he wasn't as powerful as a martial artist at the first stage of inner force. Chapter 10. That's right. For example, transmogrification, invisibility, tracking, lock-on, healing, maturing plants, alchemy, forging, and so on. Elder Sky said, I will transmit the corresponding spells and usage methods of each level to you. Just as Elder Sky finished speaking, a thought flashed through Xiao Chen's mind. Another sheepskin scroll appeared. Recorded on it were the spells and methods that cultivators of each level could use. Xiao Chen took a look at the spells that could be used in the first level of the refinement stage. Damn, there was nothing. Elder Heaven Ancestor, why is there nothing in the first level of refinement stage? Xiao Chen asked in a depressed tone. The first level of a martial artist's inner force is only for strengthening the body and allowing the user to exert the body's maximum strength. Is not that amazing, is it? Elder Heaven Ancestor asked. Xiao Chen was slightly surprised but immediately nodded his head. Indeed, a martial artist's inner force was divided into the first level, second level, all the way to the 10th level. The first level of inner force was only for strengthening the body and allowing the user to exert the body's maximum strength. In other words, the user could exert the full potential of a normal person. The second level of inner force was twice the limit of the user's maximum strength. The third level of inner force was 3 times the limit of the user's maximum strength, and so on. Therefore, even if the martial artists were at the same level, there was still a gap between them. However, this gap was not particularly big. Martial artists who could cultivate inner force were generally not weak, so the maximum strength they could exert was about the same. Of course, this did not exclude those martial artists who were born with divine strength. These martial artists, once they cultivated to a certain level, would become the king of the martial artist world. Because inner force was a common martial artist's martial art, the mantra was basically the same. Even if there were some differences, it was still more or less the same. Therefore, it was relatively easy to distinguish between martial artists. Even if a martial artist had not cultivated inner force, when a martial artist used inner force, it was still possible to determine the martial artist's level of strength. Of course, that was unless it was an ordinary person who did not understand martial artists. However, Xiao Chen, who was at the first level of the Qi refining stage, was different. This was a very vague concept. Xiao Chen himself could not feel how strong he was. If it was not for Elder Sky's words, he would have thought that the first level of the Qi refining stage was useless. Thinking of this, Xiao Chen stood up excitedly and punched the dormitory wall. Boom dash, with a loud bang, the walls of the dormitory began to crumble. Although the thick concrete walls were not damaged, the limit of a normal person's strength was only this much. If one wanted to break the concrete with one punch, that would be impossible unless one was born with godly strength. Hiss, Xiao Chen sucked in a breath of cold air. Even he didn't expect that he would cause such a huge commotion. This loud noise was abnormally loud in the quiet dormitory area in the early morning. He did not know if others would think that it was an earthquake. However, Xiao Chen could clearly feel that this was the strength of a martial artist who had reached the first level of inner force. He could increase his strength to the limit. This was something that Xiao Chen had not been able to do for the past 10 years despite his efforts. Elder Heaven Ancestor, this decisive battle fortune seizing technique is simply too awesome. Xiao Chen said excitedly. It is the battle fortune seizing technique. Elder Heaven Ancestor said nervously. Isn't it the decisive battle fortune seizing technique that I am practicing? Xiao Qin said. Well, yes. Elder Heaven Ancestor also could not figure out what kind of mantra Xiao Qin was practicing. Xiao Qin felt as if his body had been reborn. For more than 10 years, he had never felt so comfortable as this morning. There were still a few hours before class. Xiao Qin sat on his bed, calmed down, and began to think about what happened yesterday. Father was missing? Although before this news was confirmed, his father had disappeared for more than half a year, and many people said that the team led by his father had all fallen, Xiao Qin still did not believe that his father had fallen. In Xiao Qin's heart, his father was his role model, and also the goal that he had been working hard to achieve. Although Xiao Feng's qualifications were not as good as Qing Menjing's uncle, the genius of the younger generation of the Qing family, Xiao Feng and Xiao Qin were very hard-working, which also made him one of the top masters of the younger generation. The trial team that was weaker than his father had successfully returned, but his father did not return. Xiao Qin felt a little strange, but with his father's strength, there should not have been any accidents. Or the fall of his father's trial team was the same as Xiao Chen's suicide yesterday. It was fake news released by someone with ulterior motives. However, what happened yesterday was a wake-up call for Xiao Qin. Someone wanted him dead. I don't know if this person has anything to do with his father's disappearance? Xiao Qin knew that all the mysteries could only be confirmed after he caught this person. However, Xiao Qin was now in the light and the enemy was in the dark. In this school there were too many people who didn't like Xiao Qin. It was a little difficult for Xiao Qin to find this person. If it wasn't for the fact that Xiao Qin had cultivated a calm and inexpressive personality since he was young, these blows from yesterday would have been enough to make him collapse. If it was replaced by that good-for-nothing hedonistic idiot on the surface, he might really have committed suicide. This was also the reason why after the news of Xiao Chen's suicide spread in the school, no one suspected Xiao Chen's suicide. Instead, they felt strange that Xiao Chen did not die. It had to be said that the mastermind behind this was really sinister. He killed me and framed me as a suicide. Seeing that it was almost time, Xiao Chen washed his face, left the dormitory and walked in the direction of the classroom. Along the way people kept pointing at Xiao Chen. Perhaps they were gloating because Xiao Chen was kicked out of the Xiao family, or perhaps they were gloating because Xiao Chen committed suicide yesterday and appeared again today. However, Xiao Chen didn't care. He just frowned in his heart. In this environment, it was really a little difficult to find the person who harmed me. At least in Xiao Chen's opinion, everyone could be the murderer who harmed me, and everyone didn't look very similar. Hey, isn't this Xiao Chen? Where are you going in such a hurry? A teasing voice came into Xiao Chen's ears. This was the voice of Qiao Yuliang. Xiao Chen stopped, raised his head and looked coldly at Qiao Yuliang. With Xiao Chen's current strength, it was easy to teach Qiao Yuliang a lesson. Although the Qiao family was powerful, Qiao Yuliang was just like him in the past, a rich playboy who couldn't cultivate inner force. However, what Xiao Chen was afraid of was Qiao Yuliang's side, Qin Jinpeng. Qin Jinpeng was a stage 2 inner force martial artist, and Xiao Chen didn't want to reveal his strength too early. Who knew if the people who harmed me were these two or if they were watching nearby? If they knew that I had successfully mastered the strength of stage 1 inner force, maybe they would want to kill me even more. Thinking quickly, Xiao Chen couldn't think of a good way. Chapter 11. Xiao Chen, why are you so flustered? Not long after Qiao Yuliang's teasing voice fell, Elder Heaven Ancestor's teasing voice sounded in Xiao Chen's ear again. F***CK. Elder Heaven Ancestor, can you stop causing trouble? I'm already in a difficult situation. Xiao Chen responded helplessly in his mind. Ha, Xiao Chen knows how to look at me coldly? Your eyes are so sharp. I'm so scared. Qiao Yuliang saw Xiao Chen's cold eyes. Not only was he not afraid, but he laughed even more unscrupulously. Yesterday Qiao Yuliang was a little annoyed that Xiao Chen didn't die. Mother****, he booked a banquet at the largest hotel in Songning City, Azure Sea Palace. After school in the evening he prepared to celebrate the death of his longtime rival, Xiao Qin, with his new underling, Qin Jinpeng, and a group of former underlings. But he didn't expect to see a lively Xiao Qin come back when he just walked to the school gate. How could he not be annoyed? Originally he wanted to teach Xiao Qin a lesson yesterday, but who would have thought that Qing Minjing would appear? In front of Qing Minjing, Qiao Yuliang couldn't go too far. Although Qiao Yuliang knew that Qing Minjing didn't like Xiao Qin at all, beating up her ex-fiancé in front of her was a little like slapping her in the face. So Qiao Yuliang endured it. However, after he heard the underlings' report this morning, he couldn't bear it anymore. Last night, when he was chasing after Qing Minjing, Xin Jingxian had secretly slipped a bag of money to Xiao Chen. Although he knew Xin Jingshuan's character and that she would even give some money to a poor beggar, if Cheng Minjing hadn't told Xin Jingxian that Xiao Chen had no money, how could Xin Jingxian have given money to Xiao Chen? Why was Goddess Cheng so concerned about Xiao Chen? Was it just because Xiao Chen was her ex-fiancé? Therefore Chao Yuliang was so angry that he brought Qin Jinping and a few of his underlings to stop Xiao Chen early in the morning. He wanted to teach him a lesson and warn him to stay away from Cheng Minjing. Hihi, do you need any help? The Elder Heaven Ancestor's voice rang out again. Help? You can help? Xiao Chen frowned slightly. Even if the Elder Heaven Ancestor used his body to attack, wouldn't he have exposed his true strength? This wasn't what Xiao Chen wanted to see. Of course, if I don't show you my strength, how can you admire me as your master? It seems that you don't respect me very much. The Elder Heaven Ancestor said arrogantly. Xiao Chen was about to say something to the Elder Heaven Ancestor when Qin Jinping, who was not far behind Chao Yuliang, pretended to notice the situation and said, "Oh, isn't this boss? Boss, what trouble are you in? I'm here. Boss, just tell me what to do." Qin Jinping did this on purpose to humiliate Xiao Chen. He wanted to make Xiao Chen feel the difference between heaven and earth. The more he hit Xiao Chen, the more he would feel inferior. Ha, Xiao Chen, if I were you, I would be ashamed. Don't tell me that you need a little brother to protect you? All right, you also have an ex-fiancé. Chao Yuliang also played along with Qin Jinping's act. If I were you, I would be ashamed. Even if I didn't commit suicide, I would transfer to another school. How could you still have the face to stay here? Let me give you a piece of advice. Stay away from Cheng Minjing in the future. Transfer to another school? Xiao Chen's heart moved slightly. Yes, I can transfer to another school. Here, I stand in the light and the person who wants to deal with me is in the dark. It can be said that it is extremely difficult to find him. But if I transfer to another school, this person will have to go to the new school to find me if he wants to harm me again. In this way, this familiar face will also be exposed in the light. What Xiao Chen didn't expect was that Chao Yuliang's inadvertent words reminded him. But Xiao Chen immediately smiled bitterly. Now he had lost the halo of the young master of the Xiao family. He didn't have money or background. How could he transfer to another school? If he didn't pay the transfer fee to the new school, would they let him go as he pleased? Well, Qin Jinping, Chao Yuliang dared to insult me. You beat him up for me. Beat him up until his mother can't recognize him. Xiao Chen suddenly shouted. However, the tragedy in Xiao Chen's heart was that it wasn't him who shouted. It was the bastard Elder Heaven Ancestor who took over his body and shouted. Therefore, this sentence of Xiao Chen shocked Chao Yuliang and his underlings. No matter how stupid this Xiao Chen was, he wouldn't be stupid to this extent, right? Qin Jinping clearly wanted to humiliate him and he really believed it? However, what made Chao Yuliang even more shocked was that Qin Jinping actually replied loudly, "Yes. Boss, don't worry. Chao Yuliang dared to humiliate you. I will let him know that those who humiliate others will be humiliated in return." Chao Yuliang was slightly stunned. He looked at Qin Jinping with some surprise. He thought that there was no need for Qin Jinping to continue acting, right? However, the next moment he saw a fist enlarging in front of his eyes, continuously enlarging. Bang! Chao Yuliang's face was punched by Qin Jinping. Chao Yuliang suddenly let out an ah scream. Blood flowed from his nose as he took 2 steps back. He looked at Qin Jinping in horror. Qin Jinping, you, bang. The answer to Chao Yuliang was a kick to the nether. Qin Jinping directly kicked Chao Yuliang's little brother. Chao Yuliang suddenly covered his crotch and jumped up on the spot. He was in so much pain that he was sweating profusely. Qin Jinping was a master of stage 2 inner force. This hit on Chao Yuliang's body was equivalent to taking his life. Motherf asterisk her, Qin Jinping, you're crazy? Chao Yuliang shouted. However, the answer to Chao Yuliang was Qin Jinping's slap. Pop. Chao Yuliang was slapped in the face. At this moment, Chao Yuliang's underlings looked at Qin Jinping in shock. They suspected that this Qin Jinping was playing infernal affairs. Previously, he pretended to surrender, but in fact he wanted to humiliate Chao Yuliang at the right time? But this was not logical. Xiao Chen had already lost his power. How could a destitute young master be compared to Chao Yuliang at all? Chao Yuliang and his underlings were stunned. Go. Pull this madman away. Chao Yuliang shouted at his underlings in exasperation. These underlings hesitated for a moment. They were Chao Yuliang's underlings, but they were not bodyguards. They were just students of the school. The strongest among them was only a stage 1 inner force martial artist, and Qin Jinping was a stage 2 inner force martial artist. This was not a secret in Chao Yuliang's circle. This was also the reason why they did not dare to make a move before. But now Chao Yuliang had given the order. These underlings had no choice but to bite the bullet. Otherwise the consequences would be even more miserable. Therefore in front of Xiao Qin there was a big fight. Qin Jinping was desperately beating Chao Yuliang, and Chao Yuliang's underlings were desperately beating Qin Jinping. Fortunately Qin Jinping seemed to be possessed. He only attacked Chao Yuliang, but he was indifferent to those underlings who were beating him. Chapter 12. To be honest, Chao Yuliang and his underlings were not the only ones who were shocked. Xiao Qin himself was also shocked. He was also very curious as to why Qin Jinping suddenly attacked Chao Yuliang like a madman, putting on a wonderful dog-eat-dog show. That's right, it's the Elder Heaven Ancestor. Xiao Qin suddenly remembered what the Elder Heaven Ancestor said before. Elder Heaven Ancestor must be behind this. But how did the Elder Heaven Ancestor do it? Elder Heaven Ancestor, you did it, didn't you? At this moment Xiao Qin had already regained control of his body. It was only for a moment that the Elder Heaven Ancestor took over his body. He Xiao Qin, it seems that you are not stupid. That's right, I did it. Elder Heaven Ancestor said proudly. How did you do it? Xiao Qin was very shocked. He didn't care about the arrogant tone of the Elder Heaven Ancestor. Cultivators have strong mental strength. It is still possible to influence other people's thoughts. Elder Heaven Ancestor said. Influence other people's thoughts? Xiao Qin suddenly understood. He couldn't help but be very excited. So that's how it is. Cultivators are actually so powerful? At first, Xiao Qin thought that cultivators were just a roundabout route. They used special methods to achieve the power of a martial artist. But now, it seemed that was not the case at all. Nonsense. Cultivators are a very high-end and powerful profession. How is it? Your master is considered powerful, right? Now do you admit defeat? Elder Heaven Ancestor asked. Very powerful. But when can I influence other people's thoughts? Xiao Qin asked with some expectation. You are only at the first level of the refinement stage. Don't bite off more than you can chew. Elder Heaven Ancestor reminded. Xiao Qin was a little unwilling. When he was about to ask again, a wheezing voice came over. Boss, I heard that the traitor Qin Jinping and Chao Yuliang are together to cause trouble. I'm not late, am I? I'm here. As soon as Xiao Qin turned his head, he saw a ball covered in bandages running towards him at an incomparably fast speed. The speed did not match his size, but his speed was just that fast. Xiao Qin's heart slightly moved. This person was another one of his underlings. His name was Zhuing Xiong. Yesterday when Xiao Qin was down and out, Zhuing Xiong didn't come to school. So, Xiao Qin subconsciously thought that Zhuing Xiong was also ungrateful and betrayed him. He didn't expect that Zhuing Xiong would run over so early in the morning. What made Xiao Qin the most strange was that Zhuing Xiong was actually covered in bandages. He was simply like a mummy. Zhuing Xiong? If it wasn't for his size and voice, Xiao Qin almost couldn't recognize him. Boss, am I late? When Zhuing Xiong ran over, he was stunned to see the scene in front of him. Qin Jinping, Chao Yuliang and Chao Yuliang's underlings were actually fighting together. This was simply a big fight. Wow, boss, are they crazy? Who knows? Chao Yuliang came looking for trouble before. Qin Jinping said that he would help me teach Chao Yuliang a lesson, so I agreed. You saw the result. Xiao Qin shrugged and said innocently. Indeed, he was very innocent. It had nothing to do with him. It was obviously Elder Heaven Ancestor who did it. Could it be that the traitor is playing infernal affairs? No, this isn't his personality. Is he really crazy? Zhuing Xiong looked at Qin Jinping, who was in the middle of the battle royale, and muttered to himself. Who knows? Let's go. Don't worry about them. Xiao Qin said to Zhuing Xiong. Then he waved his hand at Qin Jinping and said, Jinping, you did a good job. Qin Jinping was still waving his fists and punching Chao Yuliang. While Chao Yuliang was protecting the vital parts of his body, a trace of viciousness flashed in his eyes. Xiao Qin, don't be too proud. Boss, did you really get kicked out of the Xiao family? After the two left and entered the classroom, Zhuing Xiong asked. That's right. Xiao Qin sighed slightly. His eyes fell on Zhuing Xiong's face. However, from his eyes, Xiao Qin saw concern and worry. There was no mockery or schadenfreude. It seemed that Zhuing Xiong wasn't a two-faced villain. Yesterday he didn't show up. Xiao Qin had wronged him. His injuries were probably related to him not coming to school yesterday. It's true. Wow, then breaking off the engagement is also true? Zhu Xiong exclaimed. That's true. Xiao Qin nodded. Forget it. There are plenty of fish in the sea. Boss, you still have me. Zhu Xiong comforted him. However, Xiao Qin felt a chill run down his spine. And you? By the way, what's with your body full of injuries? I'm no longer the Xiao Qin from before. Do you still call me boss? Xiao Qin asked. Wow, once a boss, always a boss. I'm not Qin Jinpeng the traitor. As for this injury, I fell. Zhu Xiong was obviously unwilling to mention his injuries. Old pig, thank you. Xiao Qin was a little touched. However, Xiao Qin looked at Zhu Xiong up and down and asked, Did you jump off the cliff? You have injuries all over your body? Who are you lying to? Ugh. Zhu Xiong's expression was stagnant. He smiled bitterly and said, Wow, you are indeed a boss. You saw through the flaws at a glance. Well, to be honest, yesterday I heard that you were chased out of the family and the Qing family broke off the engagement. I was going to come to school to support you, but my dad didn't agree. He asked me to stay away from you, so I quarreled with him. In the end, he beat me up like this. Although Zhu Xiong's words were simple, Xiao Qin knew that the situation at that time was probably quite intense. What kind of quarrel was it to beat him up like this? In Xiao Qin's heart, there was only deep emotion. Disregarding the traitor Qin Jinpeng, Zhu Xiong was a brother. That was enough. In fact, the one Zhu Xiong never left was the prodigal Xiao Qin. Then why did you come out now? Xiao Qin was a little puzzled. He was already beaten up like this. Why did the Zhu family allow Zhu Xiong to come out today? It's because the old ancestor of my family asked my dad not to interfere in my affairs. If there is a problem, the old ancestor will bear it. So, my dad didn't even dare to fart. Zhu Xiong said proudly. Xiao Qin nodded. Xiao Qin knew about the old ancestor of the Zhu family. Only this old ancestor could say such domineering words. The children of other families all kept a respectful distance from Xiao Qin, for fear of angering the Qing family. Moreover, it was reasonable that Zhu Xiong's father didn't allow him to have any contact with Xiao Qin. After all, a big family would consider the gains and losses of the family as a whole, rather than personal preferences. Naturally, the Zhu family didn't want to offend the Qing family because of such a small matter. However, since the old ancestor of the Zhu family had spoken, the Zhu family naturally didn't dare to say anything. Because the old ancestor of the Qing family didn't dare to act rashly. Chapter 13. The Zhu family that Zhu Xiong belonged to used to be ranked at the bottom of the 4 big and 5 small aristocratic families. It was said that they were about to be kicked out of the aristocratic families in the previous year's aristocratic family meeting. As the heir of such a family, Zhu Xiong naturally didn't have a good life. Thus, he became one of the targets of Qiao Yuliang's bullying. Xiao Qin had only helped him when Qiao Yuliang was bullying him. Since then, Zhu Xiong had become Xiao Qin's follower. To Xiao Qin this was nothing. However, to Zhu Xiong, it was like a drop of water being repaid with a gushing spring. Because of Xiao Qin, he had been able to live with more dignity from then on. Not long after this incident, the Zhu family held a family meeting on the eve of the aristocratic family's meeting. The Zhu family was prepared to give up on participating in the meeting. After all, it was already certain that they would be kicked out of the aristocratic families. If they went, they would only be slapped in the face. It would be even more embarrassing. What was the point of looking for abuse? However, at this time, an old ancestor of the Zhu family returned. Actually, to be honest, this old ancestor was only the Zhu family's granduncle. He didn't have any direct descendants. Even so, he could be considered as the ancestor of the Zhu family. Xiao Qin didn't know how powerful the Zhu family's old ancestor was. However, he knew that after the Zhu family's old ancestor came back, he only paid a visit to the Qing family. In the following aristocratic family meeting, the Qing family's old master actually supported the Zhu family from the bottom of the 5 small aristocratic families to the top of the 5 small aristocratic families. Although the Qing family was the top of the 9 aristocratic families, old Master Cheng's suggestion to let the Zhu family be the top of the 5 small aristocratic families for no reason was a bit unacceptable. However, the appearance of the old ancestor made everyone shut up. Moreover, everyone agreed that it was a waste of the Zhu family's talent to be the top of the 5 small aristocratic families. However, the old ancestor didn't have any intention of fighting for power. He only wanted to maintain the status of the Zhu family. However, such a powerful person had actually taken a fancy to Zhu Xiong and decided to make him his successor. As a result, a member of the Zhu family, an aspiring martial artist family, also embarked on the path of cultivation. However, Zhu Yingxiong had started his cultivation relatively late and had yet to reach the first stage of inner force. He had only touched the edge of the barrier, which was also the reason why his father was able to beat him up so badly. Xiao Qin patted Zhu Yingxiong's shoulder. Although he didn't say anything, everything was expressed without words. Xiao Qin saw Zhu Yingxiong's sincerity. However, the situation he was facing now wasn't something that Zhu Yingxiong could help him. The old ancestor of the Zhu family wouldn't help him just because of his relationship with Zhu Yingxiong. Not to mention Zhu Yingxiong, the old ancestor didn't care much about the Zhu family's matters. "Alright boss, are you really okay? I heard that you committed suicide yesterday. I was in the hospital and really couldn't move. This morning when I finally felt better, my lackeys called me and said that Chao Yuliang and Qin Jinping were looking for trouble with you. While I was happy that you didn't commit suicide, I also rushed over, afraid that these two would find trouble with you. However, I didn't expect them to fight among themselves." "It's okay. What could it be?" Xiao Qin's tone had a hint of helplessness. "I don't know why they fought. But Qin Jinping definitely didn't find his conscience. I don't think it's possible. I didn't like this kid before. If he didn't follow you before me *CK, I would have already killed him," Zhu Yingxiong said. Xiao Qin nodded and didn't say anything. Zhu Yingxiong thought that Xiao Qin was in a bad mood, so he didn't say much. He didn't know that Xiao Qin didn't know what kind of attitude he should have when facing Zhu Yingxiong now. Should he show his original face or continue to pretend to be a playboy? If he continued to pretend to be a playboy at this time, he was purely a hopeless big idiot. Maybe when Zhu Yingxiong saw that he was hopeless, he would stay away. Of course, this was unlikely to happen with Zhu Yingxiong's character. The Zhu family was strong, and as the grandson of the Zhu family, Zhu Yingxiong was still Xiao Qin's lackey without the slightest dissatisfaction. He was even more of a lackey than Qin Jinping. He was simply Xiao Qin's lackey. Xiao Qin naturally didn't want to deceive him anymore, but Xiao Qin was afraid that he would be exposed and be attacked by his enemies. Therefore, in the contradiction, Xiao Qin could only choose to be silent for the time being. In the corridor of the teaching building, Qin Jinping, Chao Yuliang, and the others were still putting on a wonderful scene of Street Fighter until the school's security team came and forcibly separated them. This school was invested and built by the Shin family, and the Shin family was naturally Qin Jingshuan's family. The school's security team leader was actually a Stage 2 Inner Force martial artist, and he was a martial artist who was about to break through to Stage 3. This was enough to show how powerful the Shin family was. This was also the reason why the Shin family stood proudly outside of the 9 aristocratic families. "Chao Yuliang, Qin Jinping, what's going on?" the security team leader shouted. To deal with these playboys, only the security team leader could do it himself. "Don't you know that fighting is prohibited in the school? Do you want to be expelled?" Chao Yuliang looked at Qin Jinping angrily. He was very angry, but he didn't dare to say anything about the fight. Although Xiao Qin was down and out, the children of the aristocratic families were always looking for trouble with each other in private. It couldn't be said in public. Once the school knew about it, they would be severely punished. Although it wasn't a big deal if these children were expelled from the school, this was the Shin family's school. If they were expelled, how humiliating would it be? They wouldn't be able to raise their heads in front of the children of the other aristocratic families. What's more, Chao Yuliang still wanted to pursue Qing Minjing. If he was expelled, how could he pursue her? How could he have the face to pursue her? "Captain Shin, the aristocratic family's meeting is coming soon. Don't you know that there will be a competition between the younger generation? I and Qin Jinping have a competition in advance. It's different from fighting." Although Chao Yuliang felt wronged, he didn't forget to stare at Qin Jinping and asked, "Am I right, Qin Jinping?" "Yes, Captain Shin. It's just that my strength is slightly higher than Brother Liang, Chao Yuliang's. So, I let the few of them fight together to balance out our strengths." Qin Jinping explained why Chao Yuliang's underlings had also joined the battle. Captain Shin naturally didn't believe their words, but he also knew that after Xiao Qin was down and out, his underling Qin Jinping switched to Chao Yuliang's side. That was to say, Chao Yuliang and Qin Jinping were on the same side. They had no reason to fight. However, even if it was a competition, they couldn't kill each other, right? It was obvious that both of them were seriously injured, but since the parties involved said that they were fine, Captain Shin didn't want to cause more trouble. He waved his hand and said, "Okay, since you are fine, go to class quickly. Don't block here." Chapter 14. Chao Yuliang and Qin Jinping quickly nodded and left with their tails between their legs. However, after a few steps, Qiao Yuliang heard Captain Shen's words that made him stagger and almost fall to the ground. Isn't that stupid? You can't beat each other to death even if you want to learn from each other. Isn't that stupid? When he walked to the corner of the teaching building and couldn't see Captain Shen behind him, Qiao Yuliang stopped and looked at Qin Jinping gloomily. His eyes were as if he wanted to skin Qin Jinping alive. Qin Jinping F***CKU? Don't think that I don't dare to do anything to you just because you're a martial artist at the second stage of inner force. Our Qiao family's bodyguards can still kill you. Brother Liang? I really didn't mean it. I don't know what happened. I seemed to be confused just now, and then I didn't know anything until Captain Shen pulled me away. I didn't know what happened. Qin Jinping was so scared that his face turned pale. Although the Qin family wasn't weak, he was just a concubine's son in the Qin family. Wasn't it child's play for Qiao Yuliang to teach him a lesson? Even if he was beaten and sent to the hospital, the Qin family wouldn't stand up for him for this matter, so he was so scared that he almost knelt down. Brother Liang, you have to believe me. Xiao Qin has already fallen. Unless I'm stupid, I won't continue to be his follower. I'm not stupid like Zhuing Xiong. Qiao Yuliang frowned. What Qin Jinping said was very reasonable, and he also felt that Qin Jinping wasn't a fool. He wouldn't do such a stupid thing, but it just happened that Qin Jinping did such a stupid thing. You said you didn't know anything just now? How can you prove it? Qiao Yuliang asked. How can I prove it? I humiliated Xiao Chen in the basketball game yesterday. How could I be his accomplice? Brother Liang, please understand. Qin Jinping said carefully with a sad face. Qiao Yuliang nodded. Logically speaking, Qin Jinping and Xiao Chen broke up yesterday. What happened yesterday was more damaging to Xiao Chen than today's beating of Xiao Chen. After all, for a playboy like Xiao Chen, being beaten was nothing, but losing his face in front of so many people was worse than death. Of course, Qiao Yuliang had underestimated Xiao Chen. The playboy who cared about face was just Xiao Chen's disguise. The real Xiao Chen didn't care about this at all. How could face be more important than life? Qin Jinping, I think you have schizophrenia. You better see a doctor. Qiao Yuliang said coldly, forget about this matter. If there is a next time, I don't mind letting you live a life worse than death. Definitely not. Qin Jinping wiped the cold sweat on his forehead. I must have drunk too much last night. My mind is not clear. Yes, it must be. Be careful in the future. Qiao Yuliang rubbed his swollen face and said angrily. If it weren't for Qin Jinping, who used to be Xiao Chen's underling, humiliating Xiao Chen even more, Qiao Yuliang really wanted to kick Qin Jinping aside. But after thinking about it, he endured it and believed Qin Jinping for once. In a private room of a tea house, there were two middle-aged men sitting. One of them was wearing luxurious clothes. At first glance, it was obvious that he was a successful person in the business world. The other was wearing a white robe. At first glance, it was obvious that he was a powerful martial artist. However, the two were plotting something at the moment. After a while, the two obviously reached a consensus. Then the two walked out of the private room one after another and left. The man in the white robe drove all the way back to the Qing family, the head of the 9 families. Young master, you're back. The master is in the meeting hall. He asked you to go there directly after you came back. A disciple of the Qing family said to him. This person was the young master of the Qing family and also Qing Minjing's father, Qing Zhongming. He was now a martial artist with stage 6 inner force. Among the younger generation, he was also a very powerful existence. I know. Qing Zhongming nodded and walked quickly to the meeting hall. At this moment, the old master Qing of the Qing family, Qing Tianqiu, was already sitting in the main seat of the meeting hall. In front of him stood Qing Zhongming's younger brother, Qing Zhongfan. Big brother, you're back. When Qing Zhongfan saw that Qing Zhongming had returned, he asked anxiously, how is it? Is there any news about third brother? No, I went to the warrior guild to ask. The other trial teams have all returned, except for Xiao Feng and third brother's trial team. Qing Zhongming sighed and said helplessly. Xiao Feng. I don't know if my son is dead or alive. I'm so angry. Qing Tianqiu slammed the armrest of the armchair and shouted angrily, oh right, how is Xiao Feng's little bastard? Is he dead? I heard that he jumped off a cliff and died. Did he get away with it? Father, Xiao Chen is not dead. The news of him jumping off a cliff is just a rumor. Qing Zhongming knew that Xiao Chen was not dead last night. It was just that old Master Qing did not know. Not dead? Qing Tianqiu frowned. Zhongming Zhongfan, what do you think? How should we deal with that little bastard Xiao Chen? When I think of him, I think of Zhongqian. Father, Xiao Chen is now in dire straits. Even if our Qing family is the leader of the 9 families, we can't go overboard. If the other families see this, they will think that our Qing family is too overbearing. Overbearing? I'm just that overbearing. Qing Qianqiu snorted coldly and said, Zhongqian's fate is unknown. It's all because of that bastard Xiaofeng's mistake. The son has to pay his father's debts. Zhongming, I know that Xiaofeng is your sworn brother. But think about it. Are they biological brothers or sworn brothers? Zhongming knows. Qing Zhongming's heart skipped a beat and he quickly responded. Then tell me, how should we deal with Xiaoqian? It was not that Qing Tianqiu did not want to let go of a junior. It was just that his most outstanding son Qing Zhongqian's fate was unknown. He had no way to vent his anger on the Xiao family. He could only pick a soft persimmon to pinch and vent his anger on Xiaofeng's playboy son. Anyway, Xiaoqian was a useless playboy. This kind of trash who could not cultivate inner strength and could not contribute to the family. The Xiao family would not fight with the Qing family. So, Qing Qianqiu vented his anger on Xiaoqian. Father, in fact, sometimes the pleasure of revenge does not necessarily come from killing someone. It comes from torturing someone. If Xiaoqian were to be tortured and humiliated, wouldn't it be more satisfying for you, father? Qing Zhongming asked. Tell me, you mean we should torture and humiliate Xiaoqian? Qing Tianqiu listened to Qing Zhongming's words and was a little interested. Qing Zhongfan was also stunned. He looked at Qing Zhongming with some surprise. Qing Zhongming and Xiaofeng were sworn brothers. With this relationship, it was destined that Qing Zhongming should be biased towards Xiaoqian. However, how could he make such a suggestion? Could it be that Qing Zhongming was also angry with Xiaofeng? Chapter 15. However, Qing Zhongfan didn't say anything. Instead, he waited to see what would happen. Father, I have a good idea to torture and humiliate Xiaoqian. Qing Zhongming said, think about it. If a young master who used to be high and mighty becomes a follower or servant, what would it feel like? Servant? Are you saying that you sold him as a slave? Qing Tianqiu didn't quite understand what Qing Zhongming meant. If you sell him, we won't be able to see it. Who knows if the Xiao family will buy him back? Of course not. Qing Zhongming said and sneered. What if he becomes Menjing's servant? A young master who used to be high and mighty in the Xiao family, Menjing's fiancé, has now become Menjing's servant. What a huge drop. Even normal people can't stand it, let alone Xiaoqian, that foppish young master. This will probably make him feel worse than killing him. Oh? What you said is quite interesting. But will Xiaoqian be willing? I think he would rather die than do it, right? Qing Tianqiu nodded in agreement. Indeed, he also knew that these young masters from aristocratic families cared the most about their reputation, especially a foppish young master like Xiaoqian. Now, he had changed from a young master and Menjing's fiancé to Menjing's servant. This was equivalent to slapping him in the face. This would make him feel worse than killing him. Not willing? As far as I know, he's penniless right now. As long as I use a few tricks and let the school pick on him, I'll charge him some fees. If Xiaoqian can't afford it, he'll be expelled. At that time, he won't even have a place to live. If he's unwilling and wants to live, then he'll be at my mercy. A sinister smile flashed across Qing Zhongming's face. Good, this is a good idea. Qing Tianqiu agreed. Then it's settled. Ah, this drop is enough for that little bastard Xiaoqian to suffer. The more he feels, the more I can vent my anger. Father, then I will implement it. Qing Zhongming nodded and said calmly. Qing Zhongfan stood at the side and didn't speak. However, in his mind he was thinking about the pros and cons of this matter. Logically speaking, Qing Zhongming shouldn't be so sinister. Wasn't this putting Xiaoqian to death? With Xiaoqian's foppish character, even if he could bear it at the beginning, after a long time, wouldn't it be suicide if he was ordered around as a servant? Could it be that Qing Zhongming really wanted to put Xiaoqian to death? Qing Zhongming went straight out of the council hall and went to work. It had to be said that the Qing family had great power in Songning City. When Xiaoqian just had his morning class, he received a notice from the school. Within today he had to pay a sponsorship fee of 1 million. The reason was that Xiaoqian scored the last place in the whole school in the final exam last semester. If it was in the past, naturally, no one would find trouble with Xiaoqian because of such a small matter. He was the young master of the Xiao family. Not to mention that he scored the last place in the exam. Even if he didn't take the exam, what could the school say? But now it was different. The school clearly wanted to find trouble with Xiaoqian. Moreover, if he didn't pay the fee before school ended, then Xiaoqian would be expelled honorably. After learning this news, Xiaoqian's face was a little gloomy. It was true that he wanted to transfer to another school, but before he could get the transfer fee, the school asked him to pay the sponsorship fee first. Boss, don't take it to heart. Isn't it just 1 million? I'll help you settle it. Zhu Xiong didn't care. With the strength of the Zhu family, 1 million was nothing at all. In fact, for the previous Xiao Chen, 1 million was nothing. One of Xiao Chen's sports cars was worth tens of millions. This 1 million was just a drop in the bucket. However, when Zhu Xiong called his father's phone and learned that his source of income was also blocked, he was suddenly dumbfounded. Although it was true that the Zhu family's ancestors supported Zhu Xiong, the Cheng family clearly wanted to mess with Xiao Chen. Zhu Xiong's father, Zhu Qifu, didn't have the courage of the ancestors. He didn't dare to help Xiao Chen at this juncture. It was fine that Zhu Xiong and Xiao Chen were close. That could be avoided with the friendship between the younger generation. But it was different if they wanted to take money out. Boss, my father froze my source of income. Damn, it's really killing me. After learning the news, Zhu Xiong was a little depressed and embarrassed to tell Xiao Chen. It's okay. Xiao Chen shook his head. It was obvious that the Cheng family wanted to mess with him. Even if Zhu Xiong took out the money, he believed that the Cheng family could make up 100 reasons to let the school expel him. This was not a matter of money at all. It's okay to drop out of school. We are still brothers. Take care of Kuer for me. Xiao Chen patted Zhu Xiong's shoulder and sighed slightly. Without saying anything more, he stood up and walked out of the classroom. Boss, don't worry. As long as she is here, I will be here. I won't let anyone bully her. Zhu Xiong patted his chest and promised. For the current Zhu Xiong, this kind of thing was as easy as lifting a finger. As long as he spread the word, no one in the school would dare to touch Lin. Even Chao Yuliang and Chen Jinpeng wouldn't dare. They dared to touch Xiao Chen because of the Cheng family's attitude. But because of Lin, they didn't need to fight with Zhu Xiong to death. Wasn't that stupid? Just protect her secretly. She is a stubborn and strong girl. She has her own persistence. Xiao Chen smiled at Zhu Xiong and strode to the classroom door. After listening to Xiao Chen's words, Zhu Xiong was slightly stunned. Such philosophical words didn't sound like something Xiao Chen would say. Could it be that the adversity produced the talented? After this incident, did Xiao Chen become more profound? Xiao Chen didn't care about how Zhu Xiong looked at him and went straight out of the classroom. To be honest, in this school the only people worthy of Xiao Chen's nostalgia were Zhu Xiong and Lin. Miss Cheng Minjing, Xiao Chen thought that he wouldn't have anything to do with her in the future. As for Xin Jingxian, she was just a beautiful girl that Xiao Chen pursued in order to show off. Xiao Chen was very clear that Xin Jingxian would never like a playboy young master like him. However, the only thing Xiao Chen could rely on now was the Elder Heaven Ancestor. With the cultivation formula taught by the Elder Heaven Ancestor and the money given to him by the Miss, it shouldn't be a problem to hold on for a while. Thinking of this, Xiao Chen's mood wasn't as bad as before. He quickly walked in the direction of the dormitory. In the dormitory, Xiao Chen still had some of his own clothes, which were bought before and placed there casually. He hadn't worn them yet. These clothes were nothing to Xiao Chen in the past, but now that Xiao Chen had no source of income, he would save as much as he could. He was going to take these clothes away. However, on the way to the dormitory, Xiao Chen was stopped by a car in front of him. Chapter 16. A car that could enter the campus was definitely not ordinary. Xiao Chen stopped and quietly looked at the car in front of him. He wanted to find some clues from the car, but the car's glass was covered with a dark film. Xiao Chen didn't know who was in the car. Bad intentions? The car door opened and a middle-aged man in a white robe got out of the car. This person was naturally Cheng Zhongming. Uncle Cheng? After Xiao Chen saw the person in the car, he couldn't help but be slightly surprised. He didn't expect that the person who got out of the car was actually Cheng Zhongming, Miss Cheng Minjing's father. Xiao Chen, it seems that you have been expelled from the school and have nowhere to go, right? After Cheng Zhongming finished speaking, he didn't give Xiao Chen a chance to speak. Instead, he made a long story short. Now, I will give you a chance to survive. I am going to transfer Minjing to Songning Second High School. However, she lacks a follower by her side, which is a servant. Are you interested in going with her? Xiao Chen was stunned. He didn't expect Cheng Zhongming to give him such a chance. Whether it was a servant or not, Xiao Chen didn't care. What Xiao Chen cared about was that they could transfer to another school together. Moreover, there was actually a place for them to live. This was practically something that Xiao Chen could only dream about in the past. It seems that the school expelled me because of Uncle Cheng? Xiao Chen didn't answer Cheng Zhongming's words but asked. Even if Xiao Chen didn't want to hide it from Cheng Zhongming, the walls had ears. Xiao Chen didn't want to change too much. Only a good-for-nothing playboy would live longer. Xiao Chen, you also know that Uncle Cheng can't help it. Cheng Zhongming was slightly taken aback. He was a little surprised that Xiao Chen was able to guess it. However, after thinking about it, the Cheng clan was the only one targeting him at the moment, and he had coincidentally appeared here to say these words. No matter how useless Xiao Chen was, he should be able to figure out the crux of the matter. Then, are you giving me charity again? Or do you want to humiliate me? Xiao Chen's tone was cold. He shouted at Cheng Zhongming, I thought that you are my father's sworn brother. You are no different from my biological uncle but my biological second uncle is no different from you. Are you here to laugh at me? However, in Xiao Chen's heart he secretly said, Uncle Cheng, I'm sorry. I know you are doing this for my own good. You want to find an excuse for me to survive, but I can't thank you. At least, before Xiao Chen had enough strength, it was impossible to expose his rational side. That would only make him die faster. Xiao Chen. Cheng Zhongming smiled bitterly. He didn't know what to say as he looked at the angry Xiao Chen. Yes, he was actually very self-blaming. He didn't know whether his sworn brother was dead or alive, but he couldn't take care of his son. There were people on the school field. This scene was also seen by some observant people. But a bad life is better than a good death. I really have to thank Uncle Cheng. Xiao Chen fiercely spat out these few words. The current Xiao Chen had the awkwardness of a hero being stumped by a penny. This was completely in line with his character in the past. After the rage there was a deep helplessness. Xiao Chen had no way out. He could only give in. Then, get in the car. Cheng Zhongming sighed and said to Xiao Chen. So, Xiao Chen got in Cheng Zhongming's car under a group of mocking eyes. Cheng Zhongming drove his own car and didn't bring a driver. There were some things that he couldn't do in the open. Although Xiao Chen's previous reaction made Cheng Zhongming very uncomfortable and he couldn't explain it, if Xiao Chen's performance was passed to his father's ears, his plan would succeed. However, Xiao Chen's irritable playboy character made Cheng Zhongming a little worried. The help he provided was only in secret. But how would Xiao Chen face the future? Uncle Cheng, thank you. After Xiao Chen got in the car, he restored his calm expression. At present, it seemed that Cheng Zhongming was a trustworthy person. Xiao Chen wasn't stupid. Cheng Zhongming's approach wasn't to humiliate him, but to help him. Cheng Zhongming was thinking about it. He was shocked by Xiao Chen's words. He turned his head and looked at Xiao Chen. His eyes were full of disbelief. Xiao Chen, who was blushing with me just now, actually became a plain thank you after getting in the car? Uncle Cheng, in the past 2 days I've thought through some things. I've gotten over it and understood some things. Although Cheng Zhongming was trustworthy, Xiao Chen didn't hide anything from him. Just now, I shouted at you just for survival. You know. Cheng Zhongming's eyes focused and looked at Xiao Chen in disbelief. Cheng Zhongfan sent someone to follow him not far away. With Cheng Zhongming's strength, he could naturally feel it, but Cheng Zhongming didn't think that they could hear the conversation between him and Xiao Chen. He didn't expect Xiao Chen to be more careful than him. His father, Old Master Cheng, couldn't be at ease with Cheng Zhongming. After all, Cheng Zhongming and Xiao Feng were sworn brothers in the past. He was afraid that he would let Xiao Chen lose, so it was understandable for Cheng Zhongfan to send someone to follow him. However, what shocked Cheng Zhongming was that Xiao Chen seemed to be more sensible than before. Xiao Chen, you actually thought it through? Cheng Zhongming looked at Xiao Chen strangely. He was extremely surprised. After encountering a huge change, if I'm still stupid, wouldn't I die miserably? Xiao Chen smiled bitterly and said, Yesterday I was pushed off the cliff. What? That thing is true. Cheng Zhongming's pupils instantly became needle-like. He looked at Xiao Chen in horror. The rumor is not false? Then you. I hung on a tree branch and climbed up again? Xiao Chen naturally wouldn't tell the truth. Even if he trusted Cheng Zhongming, he couldn't talk about the existence of the Elder Heaven Ancestor and the cultivators. So that's how it is. Then it's really scary but not dangerous. Cheng Zhongming frowned. Who wants to harm you? Our Cheng family, without my father's approval, wouldn't do such a thing. This is also the reason why I feel strange. Someone wants to kill me. If Uncle Cheng has any news, you can tell me. I'll be on guard. The purpose of Xiao Chen saying so much was to let Cheng Zhongming help him find the mastermind behind the scenes. The onlooker sees the game more clearly. Maybe if he stood at Cheng Zhongming's height, he could see some clues. Moreover, it was also a great thing for Xiao Chen to have someone on his side in the aristocratic family level. Okay, I will pay attention to this matter. Cheng Zhongming felt scared when he thought about it. If Xiao Qin really died yesterday, how could he face Xiao Feng? Moreover, even if it wasn't the Qing family who did it, in the eyes of the outside world, Xiao Qin committed suicide because he couldn't get over it. It was also related to the Qing family. Chapter 17. As for Xiao Qian's change, Cheng Zhongming didn't think too much about it. After any upheaval in the family, after experiencing life and death, there would be some changes. The saying that one who survives a disaster is bound to have good fortune later on wasn't just said casually. Therefore, Cheng Zhongming attributed all this to Xiao Qin almost dying, and his mentality changed. However, this change was what Cheng Zhongming was happy to see. If Xiao Qin really didn't understand the meaning of letting him be a servant, and instead fiercely refused with a playboy's temper, then it would be really difficult for him to deal with it. Thank you, Uncle Cheng. Xiao Qin said, but I have a few sets of clothes in the dormitory. You also know my current financial situation, so I want to get them back. Okay, no problem. Cheng Zhongming nodded and said, I will drive you there. Cheng Zhongming's car drove in the direction of the dormitory building. Sure enough, after the car left, a young man with sunglasses took out his mobile phone and dialed a number. Brother Fan. Cheng Zhongming came to the school. According to what he said, he expelled Xiao Qin. Sure enough, Xiao Qin was furious. He almost quarreled with Cheng Zhongming, but maybe Xiao Qin had no way out. In the end, he was forced to compromise and get in Cheng Zhongming's car. It seems that my big brother didn't do anything. Cheng Zhongfan was relieved after listening. Brother Fan, should I continue to follow them now? The sunglasses man asked carefully. There's no need. He's just a piece of trash. Let him fend for himself. Don't worry about him. Someone else will go and kill him. Cheng Zhongfan snorted disdainfully. Come back. Yes, Brother Fan. The sunglasses man nodded. After Cheng Zhongfan hung up the phone, he quickly went to report to Old Master Cheng. Of course, if it weren't for Old Master Cheng's instructions, he wouldn't have sent people to follow Cheng Zhongming so blatantly. Father, big brother went to Xiao Qian's school and expelled Xiao Qin. Then he found Xiao Qin and proposed to make Xiao Qin his servant. Xiao Qin quarreled with him, but in the end he held back his anger and got into big brother's car. Cheng Zhongfan told Cheng Tianqiu the story in a simple and clear manner. That was great. His father killed my son. I want his son to live a life worse than death. Cheng Tianqiu nodded and said angrily. Xiao Qin packed up his clothes and glanced at his dormitory. This dormitory made him somewhat nostalgic. It wasn't because he had lived here for a long time. Speaking of which, the real impression he had was last night. But it was this night that made Xiao Qin go from a trash to an extremely powerful high-end profession of cultivator. Looking at the cracked wall, Xiao Qin shook his head, picked up his clothes and quickly went downstairs. However, when Xiao Qin was just about to get in the car, he heard the quarrel in the car. Dad, why did you let Xiao Qin be my servant? You even let us live together? Cheng Minjing didn't expect that her father suddenly called her out of the classroom. After getting in the car, he made two proposals that made her collapse. Transfer schools. Live together with Xiao Qin. Let's forget about transferring schools, but let a grown man live together with me. Is this considered cohabitation? Ahem. Minjing, I didn't ask you to live together. Do you understand? It's very popular now to share a room with a flight attendant or the campus belle. He and you are in separate rooms. He just takes care of you in your studies and daily life. Cheng Zhongming explained. But, is there a difference? Cheng Minjing was going crazy. Let my ex-fiancé be my servant? Those who don't know will think that I'm still in love. How do you want me to face others in the future? Won't others laugh at me to death? Minjing. Cheng Zhongming's tone suddenly became serious. Something happened to your uncle Xiao Feng. Xiao Qin is his only son. I'm closer to him than a real brother. Xiao Qin is no different from my son. Now that the Cheng family broke off the engagement and let the Xiao family kick him out of the house, I can't stop it. I can only provide some help to him in a cover-up situation. You mean? Cheng Minjing wasn't stupid. She was scared before, but after listening to her father's explanation, she immediately understood what her father meant. On the surface, it seemed that the Cheng family was messing with Xiao Qin, turning him from a superior young master to a servant. But in fact, Cheng Zhongming was providing a living environment for Xiao Qin. Yes, Minjing, Dad knows that you are a kind girl. You don't want your Uncle Xiao to be sad, right? Asked Cheng Zhongming. All right. Cheng Minjing nodded her head in agreement, but in her heart she still held a grudge against Xiao Chen. In the past I was his fiancé and he actually chased after the commoner school bell in front of me, and chased after my bestie Xinjing Xian. Now that he has fallen into my hands, watch how I deal with him. Miss Cheng agreed to her father's proposal. She had the face of Xiao Feng, and she also wanted to retaliate against Xiao Chen. Women were very vengeful. But, it can't be just me and Xiao Chen living together, right? Miss Cheng was a little scared. Although Xiao Chen was now down and out and he was her servant, with Xiao Chen's previous bad reputation, what if he got aroused in the middle of the night and pushed her down? I'm going to rent a villa for you near the new school. Of course it is also a shared house. There are other tenants in it. So, it doesn't matter, right? Qing Zhongming also considered this. Although he didn't mind his daughter being pushed down by Xiao Chen in this situation, if Xiao Chen dared to do so, he would definitely die. Although his daughter was his, the decision was made by old Master Cheng. Okay. Miss Cheng breathed a sigh of relief. Xiao Chen stood outside the car. He was a little dumbfounded. Is my reputation so bad? It seems that I am still a virgin, right? Well, but even Miss Cheng was deceived. It seems that my acting is really good. In fact, Qing Zhongming had long noticed Xiao Chen, but Xiao Chen was outside the car. Qing Zhongming didn't think that he could hear the conversation inside the car. He thought that Xiao Chen saw Qing Minjing got in the car first, so he deliberately didn't get in, leaving Qing Zhongming and Qing Minjing space to talk. With Qing Zhongming's level of internal energy, if he wanted to hear the words inside and outside the car clearly, he couldn't not be close. This was because the car was modified to be soundproof, and Xiao Chen was an ordinary person who couldn't even cultivate internal energy. It was even more impossible for him to hear what was said inside the car. However, Xiao Chen heard it, and even Xiao Chen himself was a little shocked. Aren't you shocked? Smart eyes and ears, this is also the ability of a cultivator. When your divine sense, that is, your spiritual force is strong enough to a certain extent, not only can you affect other people's thoughts like me, but you can also hear other people's conversations from far away. Elder Heaven Ancestor's voice sounded in Xiao Chen's ear. I say, Elder Heaven Ancestor, you are addicted to peeping at my thoughts. Xiao Chen was a little speechless. I'm afraid that Elder Heaven Ancestor also knew that he was a virgin. I can't help it. I'm also in your body. I know what you are thinking. Elder Heaven Ancestor pretended to be helpless, but his shameless tone betrayed him. He certainly didn't want to listen. Then why can't I hear your thoughts? Xiao Chen felt that it was a little unfair. You can, when your strength is stronger than mine, you can. Elder Heaven Ancestor said. But you have to wait. Xiao Chen rolled his eyes, too lazy to pay attention to this old pervert. Chapter 18. At this time the door opened. Qing Zhongming waved to Xiao Chen and said to him, Xiao Chen, get in the car. Xiao Chen opened the back door, got in the car and sat next to Qing Minjing. This action immediately made eldest young Mistress Cheng frown. It was true that she sympathized with Xiao Chen, but he shouldn't push his luck. Xiao Chen, you sit in the front. Miss Cheng moved her body to the side. Although Xiao Chen was her ex-fiancé, they didn't have any intimate actions before. Xiao Chen was busy pursuing the commoner campus belle and the popular goddess Xinjing Xian. How could he have time to care about his fiancé? I'm afraid that Xiao Chen thought that I would be his sooner or later, and he didn't need to pursue me. Although Qing Minjing didn't care about Xiao Chen's pursuit, every time she thought of this scene she was angry. Didn't you not pursue me before? Don't try to get close to me now. Want to take advantage of me? No way. If you have the ability, go and find Kerlin and Xinjing Xian. Okay, Minjing. Qing Zhongming frowned slightly. Now he already felt sorry for Xiao Feng and Xiao Chen. If Qing Minjing quarreled with Xiao Chen because of this small matter, he couldn't bear it. It's okay. I'll sit in the front. Xiao Chen didn't care. He sat in the car before and he didn't think much. He just thought that it was inconvenient to sit in the front with a pile of clothes. He put the clothes in the back seat, then got off and sat in the front passenger seat. The scene of Xiao Chen being driven out of the car by Miss Cheng would probably be spread by the people who saw it. This was also the goal that Xiao Chen wanted to achieve. The more he was down, the happier some people would be. The school that Xiao Chen and Qing Minjing were going to transfer to was Songning No. 2 Senior High School, and their previous school was Songning No. 1 Senior High School. These two schools were invested by the Shin family and were jointly run in Songning City. They were the best schools. Even if Qing Zhongming transferred to another school, it was impossible for him to find a random one. Of course, the purpose of the transfer was actually very obvious. Humiliating Xiao Chen was just to let Xiao Chen change his environment. Although Xiao Chen was famous, it was only in Songning No. 1 Senior High School. There were people who heard that Xiao Chen was a playboy, but not many knew the name Chen. There were so many children from aristocratic families. Who had the time to remember their names? Generally, it was first young Master Qin, second young Master Qin, and Qin Jinping was second young Master Qin. It had to be said that Qing Zhongming's men were very efficient. There was no need for Qing Zhongming to show up. Before his car arrived at Songning No. 2 Senior High School, the transfer procedures had been completed, and the house had been rented. This was a villa and the owner had gone abroad. However, villas near the school district were more difficult to sell. Even rich people rarely bought luxurious villas near the school district. They rented one and left after school. Who would want to stay here all year round? Therefore, this villa wasn't sold at the beginning, so it was rented out. Qing Zhongming wanted to find a co-tenant, and this villa just met the requirements. There was already a tenant in this house and there were 4 empty rooms. However, Qing Zhongming's men paid the remaining rent in one go. In Qing Zhongming's view, having one tenant was enough. It would be noisy if there were more. Moreover, the most important thing was that this tenant was a female tenant, which made Qing Minjing very satisfied. If there were 2 men in the villa, she would feel even more unsafe. Qing Zhongming drove the car to the door of the villa and stopped. A girl in a black leather coat was squatting in the garden of the villa's courtyard, fiddling with something. When she saw the car stop, she raised her head and was slightly surprised. Could it be that a new tenant came? One had to know that the rent of this villa was not low. Even if it was 1/5 of the rent, it was still a very high price. With this price, one could rent a very good 2-bedroom and 1 living room nearby, so very few people would choose to share a room with others. What was wrong with a villa? No matter how luxurious it was, co-renting was not as comfortable as living alone. Many students rented houses nearby because they didn't like the noise in the dormitory. If it was a villa, it was just a big dormitory. What was the difference? Therefore Yi Xiaoya was very puzzled. Moreover, looking at this car, it should be a Jaguar, which was relatively low-key and luxurious. Why would a person who drove such a car come to rent a house? Could it be a driver? When Yi Xiaoya was observing Qing Zhongming's car, Xiao Qin and Qing Minjing were also observing Yi Xiaoya. Yi Xiaoya's clothes were very cool. The black leather tight-fitting clothes showed off her exquisite figure, but it was hard for Xiao Qin to imagine that such a cool girl would be interested in flowers and plants. Seeing that she was holding a sprinkler in her hand, it was obvious that she was watering the flowers and plants. This made Xiao Qin feel even more amazed. This girl was really special. You are new tenants? Yi Xiaoya put down the kettle in her hand, stood up, and looked at Xiao Qin and others who got off the car. Yes, my name is Qing Minjing. Do you also live here? Miss Qing wanted to see Yi Xiaoya's character from her, but it was difficult. This girl's clothes and behavior were incompatible. Yi Xiaoya nodded and said, Yi Xiaoya, I have lived here for half a month. The room on the left upstairs is mine. You can choose the other rooms. Also, don't touch the things in the flower garden. Yi Xiaoya's voice was very cold, without any emotion. It sounded like this person was very indifferent. This feeling of being 1,000 miles away made Miss Qing a little uncomfortable. In any case, we will live together in the future. What kind of attitude is this? Don't touch the flower garden? Who cares? I'm not a gardener. However, Miss Qing's unyielding character made her say, the room doesn't matter. You came here first, so of course we won't haggle over it. However, this flower garden is a public facility. Why are you occupying it? Xiao Qin, plant some flowers and plants for me tomorrow. You can also be a gardener. Xiao Qin wiped the cold sweat on his forehead. He didn't expect Miss Qing to be a stingy person. It seemed that he would have a hard time in the future. This girl wouldn't take revenge on him for all the things he did to her in the past, would she? Yi Xiaoya was angered by Qing Minjing's words, but she couldn't say anything to refute. Miss Qing was right. Since they were all tenants of the villa, the flower garden was naturally public. You can't occupy it yourself, right? But how many of the people who actually rented here liked to play with flowers and plants? The reason why Yi Xiaoya didn't rent an apartment but a villa was that she valued the private flower garden under the villa. There was no such private flower garden in the apartment. Chapter 19. What about me? This villa is rented to 5 people. I paid 4/5 of the rent. This parterre only has 1/5 of your space. You do as you see fit. Miss Qing said arrogantly, and then she ignored Yi Xiaoya's pretty face that had turned green. She pointed to the luggage in the car and said to Xiaoqin, "Xiaoqin, take my luggage upstairs. I want to live upstairs too." Yi Xiaoya listened to Qing Minjing's last sentence, and she was even angrier. "Since you paid 4/5 of the rent, the remaining 4 guest rooms are yours. There are 2 rooms downstairs. Why do you want to live upstairs? Do you want to make life difficult for me?" However, since she was a nouveau riche, Yi Xiaoya could only be angry. She snorted and continued to squat in front of the parterre to play with her flowers and plants. Of course, the area of the entire parterre was not small. Yi Xiaoya occupied less than 1/5 of the area, but she was angry. Xiaoqin, on the other hand, had the awareness of being a servant. He couldn't be bothered to explain anything to the young mistress. She had helped him transfer schools and provided him with a place to stay. This was something that Xiaoqin could only dream of. Hence, he picked up his luggage and followed the young mistress upstairs. Qing Minjing was actually not an unruly and overbearing person, but this Yi Xiaoya was irritating enough. If she talked to the miss nicely, the miss wouldn't care about her parterre. However, Yi Xiaoya's indifferent attitude made the miss very unhappy, so she naturally targeted her. Qing Zhongming sat in the car and could only smile bitterly. He originally thought that Qing Minjing would be very happy to find a villa with a female tenant. She would also have a playmate at ordinary times, but he didn't expect that they would quarrel when they just arrived at the villa. What should I do in the future? But Qing Zhongming had no choice. When he just wanted to lock the car and go upstairs, he heard Yi Xiaoya say to him, "Driver, drive the car to the garage behind the villa. This is not a parking place. Don't block my 1/5." Qing Zhongming was speechless. "I am the driver?" However, Qing Zhongming didn't care about it. He just said to Yi Xiaoya, "I don't live here. I will leave soon." "Oh." Yi Xiaoya nodded and ignored him. She continued to take care of the flowers and plants in the yard. Qing Minjing chose the room on the far right of the villa. There was an empty room in the middle which was separated from Yi Xiaoya's room. Although Miss Qing wanted to annoy Yi Xiaoya, she didn't want to live next door to Yi Xiaoya. She was still angry. Xiaoqin put Qing Minjing's luggage in her room and was about to go downstairs to see his room. He didn't expect that he was stopped by Qing Minjing. "You, wait. What's wrong?" Xiaoqin turned around and looked at Qing Minjing. He had to admit that Qing Minjing's sweaty appearance at the moment was very attractive. Having such a fiancée was a great joy in life, but at the moment she didn't belong to him. Xiaoqin also looked away. He didn't like women as much as he seemed on the surface. "Xiaoqin, we have to set some rules in the future." Qing Minjing felt that before living together with Xiaoqin, before living together she must make some things clear. "Oh, say it." Xiaoqin stopped. Now Xiaoqin had to bow his head under the eaves. He lived in the house of the Mississippi. In front of the Mrs. Servant, whatever the Miss said was the law. Xiaoqin didn't care much. "You as a servant have no salary." The Mrs.'s first sentence was shocking. "No salary? It can't be, right?" Xiaoqin was stunned. He followed Miss Qing around just to get more money. It must be known that he didn't even have a source of living expenses. He didn't know how long the envelope of money yesterday could last. "You have to pay rent to live here, right? So, your salary can be used to pay off the debt." Miss Qing looked at Xiaoqin's stunned expression and said proudly. Qing Minjing thought, humph, didn't you ignore me in the past? Now that I'm a queen I can do whatever I want. Do you dare to resist? Oh. Xiaoqin thought it was reasonable. Indeed, she provided him with a place to live and helped him transfer to another school. It was okay to exploit a little. In fact, to be honest, Xiaoqin didn't have much need for money. In the past he spent lavishly, but that was just to disguise his image as a prodigal. What else? Xiaoqin's attitude made Miss Qing very unhappy. "Why aren't you angry? Why aren't you angry? If you are angry then I can vent my anger." However, Xiaoqin's indifferent attitude made Miss Qing feel like she was punching cotton. "Your tuition fee and food expenses will be calculated separately. These money will be recorded in your account for the time being. I will reward you with some tips regularly. You can use the tips to pay off the debt." Qing Minjing was angry, so she directly deprived Xiaoqin of his food and accommodation. How can a servant have to pay for their own food? Forget about the housing, he still has to pay for his food. This is worse than being a permanent laborer in ancient times. What else? Xiaoqin nodded. Anyway, it was recorded in his account. As long as she didn't chase him for the debt, it didn't matter. Not for the time being. I will talk about it when I remember. Miss Qing was dumbfounded by Xiaoqin. She thought, has this guy's brain not figured it out yet? He doesn't have any concept of money, right? Being exploited like this, how can he not even say a word of rebuttal? Then I will go downstairs. Xiao Chen nodded and walked downstairs. Miss Cheng looked at Xiao Chen's back as he left and clenched her teeth. The more indifferent Xiao Chen was, the angrier she was. Cheng Minjing was so angry that she stomped her feet. She didn't have the mood to tidy up her clothes. She asked Cheng Zhongming, who just went upstairs, "Dad, when are we going to school? Don't you need to tidy up your luggage? Originally we are going tomorrow morning, but you can go today." Cheng Zhongming looked at Cheng Minjing, whose face was red. He was a little puzzled. What happened to my daughter? She seems to be angry with someone. Could it be Xiao Chen? I will let Xiao Chen tidy up for me when I come back. Miss Cheng thought of another way to punish Xiao Chen. In my luggage there are some underwear. If you don't tidy them up, I will deduct your salary. If you tidy them up, I will say that you are a hooligan and continue to deduct your salary. Thinking of this, Miss Cheng's mood was a little better. Cheng Zhongming wanted to say that they were just going through the formalities with Xiao Chen. They didn't really treat him as a servant. However, when the words came to his mouth, Cheng Zhongming swallowed them again. It seemed that his daughter and Xiao Chen didn't seem to get along. If he said too much, it wouldn't be good to increase the conflict between them. Xiao Chen didn't have any clothes at all. However, even if he only had a few sets, each set of clothes was expensive and high-end. Even if he transferred to another school and started over, he was no longer the former Xiao Chen. It was better to be low-key. Chapter 20. In the new school, Xiao Chen didn't know anyone. As long as he didn't say anything, no one would know his identity. Therefore, there was no need to disguise. Therefore, Xiao Chen directly changed into the school uniform that he had never touched before. The first high school and the second high school uniforms were the same. When Xiao Chen wore it, there wouldn't be any awkwardness. Xiao Chen Minjing said that she's going to school now. Do you want to go? Cheng Zhongming walked to Xiao Chen's door and asked. Okay. Xiao Chen nodded and walked out of the room. However, Xiao Chen's attire at the moment made Miss Cheng's eyes widen. Did Xiao Chen take the wrong medicine today? School uniform? He's actually wearing a school uniform? Miss Cheng, a well-behaved girl, wouldn't wear a school uniform when there was no activity in school. Xiao Chen is actually wearing a school uniform. However, Miss Cheng was too lazy to ask. She was angry when she saw Xiao Chen. She ignored him and went out of the door. She got in the car, but before she got in the car, she looked at Yi Xiaoya. This chick is actually playing with the flowers. Xiao Chen took the initiative this time. He got in the car and sat in the front passenger seat. Cheng Zhongming drove the car and drove to the Songning Second High School. It seemed that the Cheng family had already informed them. Cheng Zhongming's car drove directly into the campus and stopped in front of the teaching building. As soon as Cheng Zhongming parked the car, a bald middle-aged man quickly walked over to greet him. This person was the school's dean. Of course, in the Shen family school, a dean was also very powerful. But no matter how powerful, even the Shen family couldn't ignore Cheng Zhongming, the young master of the Cheng family, the head of the 9 aristocratic families. Welcome, Mr. Cheng. I heard that your daughter is going to transfer to our number 2 middle school. This is an affirmation of the teaching quality of our number 2 middle school. Although number 1 senior high school and number 2 senior high school were both invested by the Shen family, there was still competition between them. The school with the best results and more students would get more bonuses. Hehe, Director Su, you flatter me. Cheng Zhongming got out of the car and shook hands with the bald middle-aged man. At this time, Xiao Chen and Cheng Minjing also got out of the car. This is. Director Su looked at Xiao Chen and asked carefully. Cheng Minjing must be Cheng Zhongming's daughter, but who was this man? This is my daughter's study partner. In fact, he's just a bodyguard and a follower. Cheng Zhongming didn't reveal Xiao Chen's real identity. After all, he wanted to give Xiao Chen a new start, so in Xiao Chen's file, the parents' column was blank. Xiao Chen was shown as an orphan. Oh, I see. Director Su nodded and didn't take it seriously. Xiao Chen's identity is hidden. I don't want other students and teachers to know about it. In the school they are just classmates. Director Su, do you understand what I mean? Cheng Zhongming said politely, but his tone was firm. Although Xiao Chen was Cheng Minjing's servant, if his identity was exposed in the school, how could Xiao Chen hold his head high? It was a humiliation to him. However, it didn't matter to Xiao Chen now. I understand. Of course I understand. Don't worry. I won't tell anyone about their relationship. Director Su promised quickly. Thank you so much. Our Cheng family plans to donate some scholarships to number 2 middle school this year. Of course, the middleman is Director Su. Qing Zhongming smiled. Thank you, Mr. Qing. Thank you so much. I thank you on behalf of all the teachers and students in the school. Director Su was overjoyed. If he was the middleman, it was his achievement. Maybe with this achievement he could be promoted to the vice principal. Then his salary would be greatly improved. Thinking of this, Director Su was even more enthusiastic and polite to Qing Zhongming. Miss Qing, in the future if you have any problems in the school, don't hesitate to look for me. Don't think that although I'm a director, the principal is very busy every day. I can still make decisions for many things in the school. Qing Zhongming nodded. He was very satisfied with Director Su's attitude. After all, Qing Minjing was different from other students. She might not be able to come to school because of her family's business. When she asked for leave, she might have to trouble Director Su. Therefore, Qing Zhongming built a good relationship with him in advance. Well, in the future if Minjing has any problems, let her go to Director Su. Yes, of course there is no problem. If it's not convenient for Miss Cheng to come forward, you can ask Xiaoqin to look for me. Director Su patted his chest and said, then I will take them to class. Okay, then I will leave first. In the future I will leave everything to Director Su. After Qing Zhongming finished the formalities, it was time to leave. After all, he also had a lot of things to do every day. As the young master of the Qing family, although the family's decisions were made by old Master Qing, Qing Zhongming was still responsible for the family's business. Miss Qing, Xiaoqin, come with me. Director Su introduced as they walked. This time I have arranged for you to be in the third grade class, not far ahead. The three of them came to the door of the third grade class, knocked on the door and then directly pushed the door and walked in. They said to the teacher in charge of the third grade class, Miss Wang, who was in class, Miss Wang, sorry to bother you, but can you make arrangements for these two transfer students? As soon as Xiaoqin and Qing Minjing entered the classroom, they immediately caused a sensation. Of course, this sensation wasn't for Xiaoqin, but for Qing Minjing. Goddess. Her appearance wasn't any worse than Goddess Tang's in the past, and her temperament and attire made her look like a lady from a wealthy family. On the other hand, although Xiaoqin wasn't bad and could even be called a handsome guy, his attire was too simple. He was wearing a school uniform and it was obvious that he was a Diao. Under the halo of Miss Qing, his attire had long been overshadowed. Introduce yourselves. Miss Wang nodded to Director Su, then said to Qing Minjing and Xiaoqin. Hello everyone, my name is Qing Minjing, and Qing Minjing as she walked to the front of the podium, and said in a natural and unrestrained manner. As soon as Qing Minjing's voice fell, there was a warm applause from the audience. For such a beautiful woman to join the third grade class, it was a beautiful scene in the boring life of studying. Although many boys also knew that there was a big gap between them and Goddess Qing, it was still okay to fantasize about her in their hearts. I'm Xiaoqin. When Xiaoqin stood in front of the podium, the atmosphere became a lot colder. I'm from the village. As expected of a poor Diao. The girls in the audience all put away their disappointed gazes. Although he was good-looking, he didn't have a bright future at first glance. Xiaoqin deliberately said this to avoid other people's attention, but in fact, Xiaoqin didn't lie. The Xiao family did have a manor in the mountain village, which was the headquarters of the Xiao family. Qing Minjing, you sit in the middle of the 8th row, the empty seat. Miss Wang began to assign seats. When Qing Minjing introduced herself, Director Su specially emphasized the seat for Qing Minjing. Qing Minjing wanted to sit at her own table, but now the seats were all fixed. There were no seats in the front row, so they could only let Qing Minjing sit at a seat that was relatively close to the back. Actually, Qing Minjing didn't want to sit with boys, so when she transferred to another school, she deliberately asked Qing Zhongming to tell her to choose an empty seat for herself. Okay, Miss Wang. Qing Minjing walked towards the 8th row. This caused a guy sitting on the 7th row on the right, who was also at her table, to frown. He thought that the teacher would let Qing Minjing sit next to him according to the usual arrangement of men and women, but he didn't expect that Qing Minjing would actually sit in the 8th row, which was even further back. This boy was called Lu Jinming, the eldest son of the Lu family of the 9th generation. The Lu family was an aristocratic family that had risen in recent years. After pushing out the original aristocratic family from the ranks of the aristocratic families at the aristocratic family meeting, they successfully rose to the top. Although they were currently ranked at the bottom, they were also the most promising stock with the potential to move forward. There was no other reason than that the Lu family started in the underworld. Originally, it was just a small fight and was only a second-rate force in Songning City. However, a few years ago they invited a consecrator from somewhere. This consecrator was quite powerful. Not only was he strong, but he also trained many potential members of the Lu family gang into martial artists. This greatly increased the strength of the Lu family gang. In the past 2 years, the Zheng family, which originally occupied 3/4 of the underworld in Songning City, was pushed back. Now the Zheng family had shrunk into an ordinary gang family in Songning City. With such a family background, Lu Zhiming was naturally tyrannical in the school and considered himself the number one in the second high school. Of course, in Songning Second High School, there were also some children of aristocratic families, but these people were not interested in dominating the school. The moment Cheng Minjing entered the classroom, Lu Zhiming took a fancy to her. Although there were also beauties in the second high school, there were not many who were as stunning as Cheng Minjing. Lu Zhiming did not have much of an appetite for little sluts. As for the higher grade beauties, they were either pursued by the children of other aristocratic families or the young ladies of other families who were already engaged. No matter how arrogant Lu Zhiming was, he did not dare to touch other people's women. It would be fine if they were ordinary people, but these children of aristocratic families were not weaker than Lu Zhiming's background. Which family's ranking among the aristocratic families was not higher than the Lu family. Therefore, after holding back for more than 2 years, Lu Zhiming's eyes lit up. He suddenly found his future goal in life. After class, you go and teach that Xiaoqin a lesson. When he comes to school tomorrow, make him bring 10,000 yuan as protection fee. Otherwise, every time you see him, you will beat him up. Make him unable to mingle in school after he just transferred. Lu Zhiming used his hand to poke a tall and sturdy boy who was sitting in the front row. The boy was wearing a gold chain around his neck. This boy looked like the gangster boss in the movies. However, the pretty boy Lu Zhiming was the big brother and he was the little brother. Understood. Brother Ming, where is that chick? This tall and sturdy boy was called Ma Gangmen. He was Lu Zhiming's loyal little brother in the second high school. This is the main point that I want you to do. After you deal with that Xiaoqin, you go and tell Cheng Menjing that in the class I am the big brother. As long as I nod my head, she doesn't have to pay. In the future, I will protect her. Lu Zhiming wanted to get close to Cheng Menjing, but there was no reason. So Xiaoqin became his victim. Okay, don't worry, brother Ming. I will do it properly for you. Ma Gangmen nodded. At the same time, after Xiaoqin finished his self-introduction, Miss Wang said to him, Xiaoqin, you sit in the 7th row on the left, next to Tang Tang. Tang Tang? Xiaoqin looked up and saw a fat girl sitting in the 7th row on the far left. This body shape, it was comparable to Zhuing Xiong. But Tang Tang? This name seemed familiar. Where did I hear it? Okay. Xiaoqin didn't say much. He didn't care about the beauty. He came here just to practice in peace and then find out who was behind him. As for who his desk mate was, he really didn't care. Xiaoqin walked quickly to the fat girl Tang Tang and sat down. After sending Director Su away, Miss Wang began the lecture. However, after Xiaoqin sat down, he suddenly felt that someone was looking at him. Furthermore, there was a hint of unfriendliness in the gaze. Xiaoqin's heart trembled slightly. He had just transferred here and did not offend anyone. Right now, Xiaoqin's spiritual sense and mental energy were much stronger than an average martial artist's. He was able to lock onto the direction of that gaze in an instant. It was from the rightmost side, a burly boy with a golden chain around his neck. Chapter 21. Xiaoqin frowned slightly. He could be sure that he had never seen this person before. Could it be that he mistook her for someone else? Xiaoqin? Xiaoqin? Just as Xiaoqin was puzzled, an uncertain voice came from his side. Xiaoqin turned his head and saw that the person talking to him was the fat girl, Tang Tang. Xiaoqin was a little surprised. Tang Tang? Are you talking to me? Do you know me? I'm not sure. Looking at the school uniform you're wearing, it's different from the information. At this time, Tang Tang was sure of Xiaoqin's identity. I heard about your things, but I didn't expect you to commit suicide. Commit suicide? Xiaoqin looked at Tang Tang strangely. This fat girl seems to know me very well. Who is she? Tang Tang, this name seemed to have been heard from somewhere, but Xiaoqin couldn't remember. You are the girl from the Tang family, the girl whose engagement was broken off. It was very sensational at the time. You should have heard of her, right? Tang Tang laughed at herself and said frankly, we are similar, both of us are in the same boat. It's you? Xiaoqin suddenly remembered who Tang Tang was. Among the 9 aristocratic families, the beautiful girl from the Tang family, although Xiaoqin had never seen her, he had heard of her. It was said that she was a beauty at the same level as Miss Cheng. She was also the fiancée of Yu Xiaochuan, the young master of the Yu family. However, when Tang Tang was 16 years old, she had a serious illness. After recovering from the illness, she became like this. Although she was chubby and cute, it was difficult to associate her with a beauty. Therefore, the Yu family decisively asked to break off the engagement. It's me, Xiaochen. Look at me. I'm already like this. I was abandoned, but I'm still quite happy. Aren't you still quite handsome? What's wrong with you? Why did you have to jump off the cliff? Tang Tang actually wanted to comfort Xiaochen after hearing the news that he jumped off the cliff yesterday. In Tang Tang's opinion, Xiaochen was as unlucky as she was. Xiaochen couldn't help but smile bitterly and said, Tang Tang, I really didn't commit suicide. That's just a rumor? I understand. Tang Tang blinked her eyes at Xiaochen. The young masters of aristocratic families all cared about their faces. Who would admit that he committed suicide? But now it seemed that Xiaochen had thought it through, so Tang Tang didn't continue this topic. By the way, Cheng Menjing, isn't she your fiancée? Why did I transfer here with you? Moreover, on the surface it seems like you don't know each other? I'm now working as a manservant for Cheng Menjing, a servant or something. This kind of identity, it's not good to tell others, right? Of course, Xiaochen wouldn't tell the truth. After all, this was the first day he met Tang Tang. Although this fat chick looked very kind, she was too gossipy. If it was spread out, he would die miserably. Working as a manservant for Cheng Menjing? The Cheng family wants to humiliate you? Tang Tang frowned after listening. She couldn't help but feel a little indignant. Why? I'm just taking what I need. Transferring schools can be considered a new beginning. At the very least, not many people here know me, Xiaochen said with a shrug. That's true. Tang Tang nodded. Xiaochen, I'm the class monitor of the 3rd grade class. I'll protect you in the future. Don't let Cheng Menjing bully you. Thank you very much. Xiaochen smiled. He didn't expect to meet a tomboy like Tang Tang on his first day at school. However, it was precisely because of Tang Tang's appearance at the moment that Xiaochen had no scruples. Otherwise, if she was really a beauty, Xiaochen was afraid that he wouldn't be able to let go of her. The class passed quickly. As soon as Miss Wang left, Ma Gangmin, who wore a gold chain around his neck, walked to Xiaochen with a skinny monkey who looked like a heavy smoker. Kid, do you know why I'm looking for you? Ma Gangmin stood in front of Xiaochen like a hill. He looked very arrogant. He held a toothpick in his mouth and asked Xiaochen. I don't know. Xiaochen really didn't know. If you have something to say, just say it. Emin, you don't know and you're still so arrogant? You're so arrogant. Ma Gangmin slammed the table so hard that Xiaochen's table shook a few times on the ground before it stopped. Ma Gangmin pointed at Xiaochen and said, Kid, do you know that a newcomer should come to me, Grandpa Ma, to pay respect to you? Pay respect to you? Xiaochen looked at Ma Gangmen in amusement. From the way Ma Gangmen slammed the table just now, Xiaochen could tell that Ma Gangmen was just a little stronger than ordinary people and was not a warrior. Yes, Ma Gangmen said proudly. I didn't see a horse head, but there is a Ma Si. Xiaochen looked at Ma Gangmen and said faintly. Ma Si? Who is Ma Si? Ma Gangmen was stunned and somewhat inexplicable. Brother Gangmen, that Ma Si means horse's butt. This kid scolded you. The skinny monkey, the heavy smoker, seemed to be a little cultured and knew the meaning of si. Emin, little bastard, you dare to scold me? Ma Gangmin came back to his senses and was about to grab Xiaochen's hair. Let me tell you, Grandpa Ma is called Ma Gangmen, not Ma Si. Xiaochen dodged it quietly. With Xiaochen's current strength of the 1st level of the refinement realm, it was easy for him to dodge the attack of an ordinary person like Ma Gangmen. Oh, a horse's anus. Isn't that a bootlicker? It's not even as good as a Ma Si. After listening, Xiaochen laughed sarcastically. Emin, little bastard, you're looking for death. What Ma Gangmen hated the most was people using his name to talk about things. Ma Gangmen meant a very hard door, indicating that he, Ma Gangmen, was guarding in front of Lu Jinming like a security door. However, Xiaochen actually said that he was a bootlicker. Ma Gangmen, what are you doing? Tang Tang went out to the bathroom. When she came back, she saw Ma Gangmen yelling at Xiaochen. She suddenly became a little anxious. In her opinion, although Xiaochen was not the young master of the Xiao family, his temper was still there. With Ma Gangmen's attitude, wouldn't they fight? At that time, Xiaochen would definitely be at a disadvantage. Who didn't know that the young master of the Xiao family was a good-for-nothing who couldn't practice internal strength? Tang Tang, you'd better mind Brother Ming's business. When Ma Gangmen saw Tang Tang coming over, his face changed slightly. He was still a little afraid of Tang Tang. After all, Tang Tang was the class monitor and a member of the Tang family. Although Tang Tang basically had no status in the Tang family now, a starving camel was still bigger than a horse. Who knew if the Yu family would change their mind and marry Tang Tang in the future? After all, Yu Shaochuan's Yu family was also very powerful. That's up to you, Ma Gangmen. Remember, this is a classroom. Tang Tang said with a cold face. Ma Gangmen looked at Xiao Chen and said sinisterly, "All right, I'll give you face. I won't touch this brat today. However, brat, listen up. Tomorrow morning bring me $10,000 as protection fee. Otherwise, hee. Ma Gangmen looked at Xiao Chen and said sinisterly. No. Xiao Chen did not give him any face and said directly. Ma Gangmen was stunned. Originally, in his opinion, Xiao Chen should be afraid or begging for mercy. Even if that was not the case, he should at least ask why he had to pay 10,000 yuan of protection fee. But Xiao Chen directly said no, which meant that he didn't put Ma Gangmen in his eyes. You're very good. You wait for me. Ma Gangmen heard the bell ringing and Tang Tang was on the side. It was not good for him to fight in the classroom. But in his heart, he had already sentenced Xiao Chen to death. If he didn't beat this kid into a transformer today, he would not be Ma Gangmen. After saying the harsh words, Ma Gangmen went back with the thin monkey-like guy. This scene was seen clearly by Lu Jinming not far away. Lu Jinming was so angry that his teeth itched. In his opinion, a transfer student was so arrogant? Was it because he was used to living in the mountains that he didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth when he came out? Brother Ming, I'm sorry. I didn't do it well. Ma Gangmen returned to his seat and said to Lu Jinming with a bitter face. It's not your fault. That kid doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth, and he has Tang Tang to help him. Lu Jinming shook his head and said very unhappily, it's just that the plan to get close to Cheng Menjing is not going to work for the time being. Brother Ming, then what should we do next? Ma Gangmen asked quickly. During the lunch break when Tang Tang is not here, let's teach this kid a lesson. It's better to do it in front of Cheng Menjing and let her know how to be afraid. Although Lu Jinming was a child of an aristocratic family, the Lu family started late and was not familiar with the children of other aristocratic families. Lu Jinming knew about the children of aristocratic families in Songning Second High School, but he had no idea about those who transferred to another school like Xiao Chen and Cheng Menjing. Ma Gangmen nodded and said, when the time comes, let's go to the men's room to teach him a lesson. Let's see if Tang Tang can still go in. Going to the men's room to beat people was also Ma Gangmen's usual method. After all, Tang Tang, the class monitor, was often a busybody. In order to avoid her, Ma Gangmen took people to the men's room, so Tang Tang could only watch helplessly. *CK. Lu Jinming glared at Ma Gangmen and said, are you stupid? If he goes to the men's room, Cheng Menjing can't go in. How can he frighten her? That's true. Brother Ming is wise. Ma Gangmen was stunned and said, I was so angry with that country bumpkin. This afternoon, I must let him know how powerful Master Ma is. Cheng Menjing naturally saw the scene where Ma Gangmen was going to teach Xiao Chen a lesson. She didn't know why, when someone went to teach Xiao Chen a lesson, it was reasonable to say that it was for her, but Cheng Menjing was a little uncomfortable. Moreover, when Tang Tang stood up for Xiao Chen, Cheng Menjing was even more uncomfortable. Even Miss Cheng herself did not understand what kind of mentality she had. Xiao Chen, Ma Gangmen is nothing to be afraid of, but behind him is the young master Lu Jinming of the Lu family. After Tang Tang waited for Ma Gangmen to leave, she lowered her voice and said to Xiao Chen, of course, if it was the old Xiao Chen, you don't have to be afraid of him, but now, people have to bow down under the eaves. It had to be said that Tang Tang was a very kind-hearted little girl who liked to gossip. Xiao Chen was a little dumbfounded after listening to her words, but he thought that it was because he was famous in the past, and he was not willing to suffer losses, so Tang Tang persuaded him. Chapter 22. I know. Xiao Chen nodded and said, don't worry. As long as he doesn't make trouble for me, I won't provoke him. Besides, I don't want to make trouble here. It's good that you understand. Don't worry. I will keep an eye on them and make them behave. Tang Tang waved her fist, looking like a big sister. In the blink of an eye, it was lunchtime. Miss Tang left the classroom and went to the canteen for lunch. Lu Jinming looked at the back of Cheng Menjing as she left, and a look of desire flashed in his eyes. However, Lu Jinming was not an idiot. Miss Cheng's clothes were very good, so she should have a good background. This was the reason why he chose the roundabout route. Xiao Chen was about to stand up and get something to eat, but he was pulled by Tang Tang from behind. Hey, what are you going to do? Xiao Chen was stunned and found that Tang Tang, the tough girl, was pulling Xiao Chen's belt. He suddenly felt a little embarrassed. I say, Tang Tang, don't pull my pants down. Men and women shouldn't touch each other. Who cares? Tang Tang didn't care and said casually, let me tell you, I'm a tough girl. I don't like men. Okay. Xiao Chen was shocked. Brother Tang, why are you looking for me? I'm asking you, where are you going? Are you going to eat? Tang Tang didn't care that Xiao Chen called her Brother Tang at all. Yes. Xiao Chen nodded. Is there anything to eat around here? Okay, don't go out. Eat with me. Tang Tang took out a few steamed buns and a jar of pickles from her school bag and put them in front of Xiao Chen. I'll eat a little. The rest is enough for you. Look at your thin body, you can't eat too much. Xiao Chen was stunned. He pointed to the steamed buns and pickles on the table and asked, are you eating this for lunch? Yeah, what else can we eat? Tang Tang glared at Xiao Chen and said, don't pretend. Don't tell me that you still have money to spend now. Even if you work for Cheng Menjing, she won't give you a little money. Looking at your clothes, I know you are as poor as me. You? Poor? Xiao Chen was taken aback. Even if your engagement was broken off, you weren't kicked out of the Tang family, right? You don't need to eat this, do you? It's not like you don't know about these big families. Benefits come first. I'm a girl and my family used me for marriage alliances. My father and mother died early. It's not much different from you. Your father and mother are missing. Grandpa doesn't love me and uncle doesn't love me. Now that I've lost the value of a marriage alliance, I'm still a rice worm at home. It would be strange if they would treat me well. I've moved out and I'm self-reliant. I won't be angry at them. Tang Tang patted Xiao Chen's shoulder and said, okay, eat it. It's delicious. You'll be fine after you get used to it. Okay. Xiao Chen had never eaten this thing, but he was really not picky. He could endure it for so many years. This willpower was not ordinary. However, Xiao Chen found today that Tang Tang was also strong. Her heart was too strong. She wasn't a tomboy anymore. She was a real man. Xiao Chen was really hungry. He didn't eat breakfast and wanted to save some money. He didn't expect Tang Tang's steamed buns to be so delicious. Not that steamed bun, don't get me wrong. Tang Tang only ate one steamed bun, and the remaining 4 steamed buns were all gobbled up by Xiao Chen. Tang Tang looked at Xiao Chen eating happily and couldn't help but smile. Xiao Chen, I didn't expect you to be able to endure hardships. You're eating so happily? I'm sorry. I was too engrossed in eating and I ate all your steamed buns. Xiao Chen found that all 4 steamed buns were eaten by him. Didn't Tang Tang only eat one? Oh, it's okay. I'm on a diet. Tang Tang smiled indifferently. Tomorrow's lunch, I'll treat you? Xiao Chen was a little embarrassed. No, I have money. No matter how down and out I am, I'm still better than you. When you recover, it's not too late to treat me. Tang Tang was really not full. These 5 steamed buns were her lunch and dinner. Each meal required 2.5 steamed buns to be full. She wanted to give half to Xiao Chen, but who would have thought that Xiao Chen directly ate 4? Okay. Xiao Chen was not pretentious. Although he had a little money now, he couldn't just sit around and eat. I'm going out for a walk. Don't walk around in the classroom. I'll be back soon. Tang Tang was not full and she was going to go out to buy 2 steamed buns or rolls to eat. Xiao Chen waited for Tang Tang to leave, and quickly stuffed half of the steamed bun in the food bag into his mouth. He was not full either. Although Xiao Chen was a bamboo pole, his appetite was not small. This was directly related to the exercise every night for many years. Xiao Chen had been consuming physical strength, so he ate a lot. Although he did not exercise last night because he did not eat breakfast, for steamed buns were still not enough to fill his stomach. However, since there was nothing left, it was fine. He wouldn't starve to death even if he ate a little less. During the rest of the lunch break, Xiao Chen closed his eyes and began to cultivate the Heaven's Stolen Fortune battle art. Cultivation was different from martial arts. Cultivators could sit still and others wouldn't be able to tell what they were doing. It was as if they were resting with their eyes closed and no one would be suspicious. As the mantra ran, Xiao Chen's whole body's primordial qi circulated back and forth in his meridians, and bursts of comfortable warmth spread throughout his body. How can your cultivation speed be so fast? Elder Heaven Ancestor felt that Xiao Chen's cultivation speed was a little different in Xiao Chen's body. Maybe I am a genius, Xiao Chen said. Tieske, this old man was a genius when he was young, but I don't see how you are a genius. You can practice the heavens fortune battle art in reverse. You are really a genius. Elder Heaven Ancestor said disdainfully. Maybe it's because I practiced it in reverse? Xiaochen asked. I don't know, but your cultivation speed is a bit abnormal. Elder Sky said, let me observe a bit more. Logically speaking, the heaven and earth spiritual qi in the city is very scarce, so your cultivation speed should be very slow. If you were to say that you have been holding back for a few years, then it would make sense that you suddenly broke through to the first level of the qi refinement realm. But now, you are about to break through to the second level of the qi refinement realm. The second level? Xiaochen was shocked. Although it seemed to be a good thing on the surface, Xiaochen also knew that haste makes waste. There must be a reason why his cultivation speed was too fast. But for the time being, I don't see anything wrong. You can continue. Elder Heaven Ancestor said to Xiaochen. Elder Heaven Ancestor's words made Xiaochen feel a little relieved. Although Xiaochen longed for strength, he was a little afraid of strength coming too fast. The second level of inner force was a level that many martial artists could reach after several years of cultivation. Xiaochen, right? Brother Ming and Brother Gangmen want you to go to the school cafeteria. Xiaochen was cultivating when the skinny monkey who was with Ma Gangmen came over and said to Xiaochen, to the cafeteria? Xiaochen opened his eyes and felt a little strange. Logically speaking, if he wanted to teach someone a lesson, shouldn't he go to the men's toilet or the roof of the teaching building? Why did he go to the cafeteria? That kind of place would easily attract the dean's attention. Machio won't treat me to a meal, right? Yes, it's to treat you to a meal. But that's Brother Gangmen, not Machio. The skinny monkey frowned and said, oh, since you want to treat me to a meal, then lead the way. Xiaochen knew that if this matter wasn't resolved, Ma Gangmen and Lu Jinming would probably think of other ways to disturb him. However, Xiaochen didn't think that he had offended this person at all, so no matter what, he would go and take a look first. If it was a blessing, it wouldn't be a disaster. If it was a disaster, it couldn't be avoided. Xiaochen was now a qi refinement stage cultivator, which was equivalent to the first level of inner force, so he wasn't afraid. Moreover, when Xiaochen was a number 1 high school, who was afraid of? So straightforward? The skinny monkey was slightly stunned. He originally thought that he would have to waste his breath with Xiaochen, but he didn't expect that Xiaochen would directly agree. It seemed that this kid was really a fool. Did he believe him just because he invited him to a meal? Xiaochen followed the skinny monkey out of the classroom and walked to the cafeteria. The cafeteria of number 2 high school was very big, similar to the cafeteria of number 1 high school. It was divided into the first, second, and third floors. The first floor was the most common type of public cafeteria, which was similar to a fast food restaurant. There was a circle of windows around selling all kinds of dishes, and in the middle were rows of tables and chairs, suitable for ordinary students to eat fast food here. The second floor was where you could order. Like other restaurants, there was a menu here, and you could order according to your preferences. This was a place that rich students liked. Of course, some school teachers would occasionally eat here, but some students whose families weren't very rich would also come here for birthday parties. The taste of the dishes on the second floor was obviously not on the same level as that on the first floor. The chefs here were specially hired from the hotel, and some special dishes were directly cooked by the hotel nearby, and then sent here. The third floor was a private room which needed to be reserved. Each private room had a minimum consumption. Generally, students who were not very rich would not go to the private room, but the school teachers often went to the private room on the third floor in groups of 3 or 5. After all, the salary of the teachers in number 2 high school was very high, and the teachers had the dignity of teachers. It was not good for them to eat with students, so it would be very embarrassing if the jokes between teachers were heard by students. Of course, the children of aristocratic families like Lu Jinming who didn't care about money were regular guests of the private room on the third floor. But today Cheng Minjing ordered in a corner on the second floor. In order to show off in front of Cheng Minjing, Lu Jinming found a table on the second floor and waited for Xiaochen. Brother Ming, do you think the skinny monkey can find Xiaochen? What if he doesn't come? I'm afraid that bitch Tang Tang will stop him. Ma Gangmen said. Who knows? Let's wait and see. There will be plenty of opportunities and we don't have to rush. The more Lu Jinming looked at Cheng Minjing, the more he felt that Cheng Minjing was not simple. Even when eating she was very elegant. Although she was eating alone she didn't look lonely. Therefore the more she was like this, the more Lu Jinming dared not to force Cheng Minjing. He could only find a way to get close to her. By the way, have you investigated Cheng Minjing's background? Chapter 23. The Lu family also had familiar teachers in the school. Otherwise, Lu Jinming would have been expelled for being so arrogant and domineering in the school. It was not easy to transfer Cheng Minjing's file, but it was also feasible to find a way. I have already found Mr. Lei of the sports team. He said he would help. Ma Jinggang said. Mr. Lei of the sports team of the school used to be a boxing member. After retiring, he came to teach in the No. 2 high school of Songning City. Of course, this was his superficial identity. His secret identity was actually a member of a gang. He was the hatchet man of Lu Jinming's father, Lu Siwen. He was also a disciple of the Lu family gang. He often helped Lu Jinming to play underground boxing. This was a man that Lu Siwen placed in the school for Lu Jinming. Maybe one day when Lu Jinming graduated, Lei Dianfeng would resign. Okay. Lu Jinming nodded. Lei Dianfeng's identity was hidden. It could not be exposed unless it was a last resort. Lei Dianfeng could help Lu Jinming secretly in the school. Not long after, Lu Jinming saw the thin monkey-like man coming upstairs with Xiao Chen. He was slightly relieved. It seemed that the thin monkey-like man was quite efficient. However, then Lu Jinming was a little unhappy. Because Xiao Chen came over under the guidance of the thin monkey-like man and sat opposite him. Damn it, did this kid really think that he was here for a banquet? But just you wait for a while to cry. Before, Lu Jinming had sent the thin monkey-like man to watch Xiao Chen carefully. This kid was not just poor but very poor. Because this guy could not even afford to buy lunch. But he still ate tang-tang steamed buns and pickled vegetables with relish, as if he had not eaten for several days. How poor was he? Therefore, when Ma Gangmen asked him for 10,000 yuan, he directly said that he didn't have it. This was understandable because this kid really didn't have it. Even if you beat him to death, he wouldn't have it. Lu Jinming didn't expect Xiao Chen to be penniless. He went to find trouble with Xiao Chen with the normal thought of teaching other students a lesson, but he didn't expect to meet such a poor guy. Therefore, Lu Jinming changed his strategy. You don't have money, right? Then I'll treat you to a meal. However, I'm the one treating and you're the one paying. If you don't have money to pay the bill, I'll pay for you. But if I pay for you, I'll definitely feel wronged and want to beat you up. When I beat you up, I'll accidentally knock over Cheng Minjing's table. Won't I have a chance to talk to Miss Cheng then? This plan seemed to be full of loopholes, but that was only for the people involved. Outsiders didn't know. In the eyes of outsiders, you treat me to a meal but you want me to pay for it myself? Even if I don't beat you up, it would be unreasonable. You're playing with me. Therefore, Lu Jinming didn't care whether there were loopholes or not. As long as it was reasonable in the eyes of outsiders, it was fine. Xiao Chen, before I'm sorry. My subordinate, Ma Gangmen, misunderstood my meaning and almost beat you up. So I'll treat you to a meal at noon to resolve the grudge. Lu Jinming said to Xiao Chen politely. Xiao Chen's eyes slightly narrowed. He thought, did Lu Jinming take the wrong medicine? Treat me to a meal? Xiao Chen still didn't understand Lu Jinming's purpose. He really wanted to see what he wanted to do. So he said calmly, oh, treat me to a meal? Why didn't you say so earlier? I thought you were going to beat me up. A meal? That's great. It just so happens that I haven't eaten enough just now. Thank you. Xiao Chen was now an expert at the first level of the refinement stage. He was already a high-end cultivator. As long as there weren't too many accidents, he could deal with whatever came his way. I've already ordered the dishes. Xiao Chen, can you see if there's anything else you want to add? Lu Jinming asked. Although these dishes are good, there's no seafood. I came from the mountains and have never eaten seafood before. Can I order some? Xiao Chen looked at the menu and asked expectantly. Okay, you order. Lu Jinming had to go all the way if he wanted to put on an act. At the very least, he couldn't let Xiao Chen see any flaws in his act at the beginning. If Xiao Chen stopped eating and walked away, how would he have a reason to beat him up? Although Lu Jinming didn't need an excuse to beat someone up, if he beat someone up to Cheng Minjing for no reason, Cheng Minjing would definitely be suspicious, right? But, do you have single-headed abalone? Xiao Chen turned his head and asked the waiter. No, only the double-headed abalone? The waiter sweated a bit. In order to satisfy the children of the aristocratic families, the cafeteria of the second high school was a joint venture with a nearby hotel. However, there was no single-headed abalone. It was the best of the best. Even in the place of origin, one might not be able to see it more than a few times. Okay, give me 10 double-headed abalone to try. Xiao Chen nodded. And a 5-pound Australian lobster. Okay, student, what else do you need? The waiter knew Lu Jinming, so he didn't have any doubts about Xiao Chen's order. After all, Lu Jinming was also one of the children of the aristocratic families. After listening to Xiao Chen's words, Lu Jinming's mouth suddenly twitched twice. Although he would ask Xiao Chen to pay for this meal, he was still the one who would pay in the end. How could Xiao Chen, a poor man, have the money to pay the bill? So, in the beginning, although Lu Jinming ordered a table of dishes, there wasn't much value in it. The total was only 2,000 to 3,000 yuan. However, Xiao Chen's few dishes cost hundreds of thousands of yuan. A double-headed abalone was 10,000 yuan, and this was still the cheapest price in school. If it were to go to a nearby hotel, it would at least be 20,000 yuan. 10 of them would be 100,000 yuan, and this didn't include the lobster money. It was true that Lu Jinming was young Master Lu, but because of the Lu family's involvement in the underworld, although his strength had gone up, his economic strength was still worse than other aristocratic families. Therefore, Lu Jinming's monthly pocket money was only 100,000 yuan. This mother-f*** spent it all at once. However, Lu Jinming couldn't stop it. If he stopped it now, wouldn't outsiders think that he was treating instead of Xiao Chen? Therefore, Lu Jinming could only pretend that nothing had happened and said gratefully, "We will eat whatever you order, Xiao Chen. Order. The more expensive you order, the more money I spend, and the more ruthless I will beat you up. This is more reasonable." In order to get close to Miss Cheng, Lu Jinming gritted his teeth and endured. Xiao Chen ordered randomly, and then the waiter saw that Lu Jinming didn't say anything and went to serve the dishes. Not far away, Cheng Minjing naturally saw the scene of Xiao Chen coming to the cafeteria. She couldn't help but frown secretly. What is Xiao Chen doing here? Why is he mingling with Lu Jinming, Ma Gangmen, and the others? Didn't they have conflicts before? Thinking of this, Miss Cheng wasn't in a hurry to finish eating and leave. She wanted to see what Xiao Chen was going to do. After all, she brought Xiao Chen over. If something happened, she wouldn't be able to explain it to her father. Troublesome Xiao Chen, I originally wanted to go back to the classroom to have a beauty sleep, but you disturbed me. However, I will remember this account one by one. When the time comes, I will teach you a lesson. Looking at the plates of delicacies placed on Xiao Chen's table, the surrounding students were very envious. That was lobster and abalone. Although they had seen it on the menu, how many people had actually ordered it? Even if they had ordered it, they would go to the private room upstairs to eat. It was the first time that they saw people eating in the cafeteria on the second floor like Xiao Chen. Of course, envy was envy. Many people who ate here also knew that their family conditions were more than moderately well off, but not very rich. In the cafeteria on the second floor, 1 or 2 ordinary dishes were about 180 yuan. They could afford it, but if it was more, only those nouveau riche students could afford it. Wow, this is the legendary top-notch double-headed abalone. It smells quite delicious and it looks even more delicate and beautiful. Then I won't be polite. Xiao Chen's voice was quite loud and even Miss Cheng, who was not far away, heard it. However, no one would despise Xiao Chen. After all, what Xiao Chen said was the truth. Among the people sitting on the second floor, there were some slightly wealthy people, but there were really not many people who had eaten double-headed abalone and such a big Australian lobster. Not only did they not despise him, but they were also very envious. Of course, in the eyes of Lu Jinming, Xiao Chen's behavior was despise. He coldly snorted in his heart and called him a country bumpkin, but he said, "Then let's eat." Yeah, Lu Jinming, you guys should also try this double-headed abalone and lobster. You guys haven't eaten it before, right? Then you have to eat more. Xiao Chen's voice was still very loud, and Miss Cheng heard it clearly. Lu Jinming was just about to pick up the chopsticks to pick up a piece of abalone, but after hearing Xiao Chen's words, his expression suddenly became sluggish, and his expression became a little unnatural. You eat it? We eat it often, and we don't want to eat it anymore. If Xiao Chen didn't make such a fuss, of course Lu Jinming would hurry up and eat. Although he was rich, this level of abalone and lobster wasn't often eaten. Originally, he wanted to fight with Xiao Chen to eat a few more, but now if he fought with Xiao Chen, wouldn't he also become a country bumpkin? Of course, if Cheng Minjing wasn't watching from behind, then Lu Jinming didn't care, but now was the time for him to show off. If in Cheng Minjing's heart he was the same as Xiao Chen as a country bumpkin, then there was no need to pursue her. He would die before he could succeed. Therefore, Lu Jinming said goodbye to the lobster and abalone in his heart while crying. Really? That's great. Then I won't be polite. If I can't eat it, I will take it away. Thank you, classmate Lu. Xiao Chen was overjoyed. He pulled the lobster and abalone plates in front of him. Ma Gangmin and the thin monkey-like man suddenly looked at each other. Originally they wanted to eat a few bites to satisfy their cravings, but now the plates were taken away by Xiao Chen. They couldn't help but turn their heads to look at Lu Jinming pitifully. How could Lu Jinming not know the meaning of these two underlings? However, the big words had already been said. He couldn't just slap his own face, right? So, he could only pretend that he didn't know and said, "This abalone and lobster, you two must be tired of eating it with me, right? Let's eat something light. This bamboo shoot is good." Chapter 24. Ma Gangmin and Skinny Monkey could only helplessly follow Lu Jinming and eat the bamboo shoots. Qing Minjing's mouth flashed a trace of a smile. How could she not see that Xiao Chen wanted to eat alone? Xiao Chen, what had he not eaten before? Did he have to be so excited to see abalone and lobster? It was obvious that he wanted to cheat Lu Jinming. Lu Jinming also saw Miss Cheng's smile. He thought that Miss Cheng was looking at him. After all, what was so good about a bumpkin like Xiao Chen? In Lu Jinming's view, it must be his words, "often eat abalone and lobster," that attracted Miss Cheng's attention. These days, who didn't like tall, rich and handsome men? Especially tall, rich and handsome men who knew how to act cool. However, what made Lu Jinming feel strange was that after Xiao Chen ate an abalone, he stopped eating seafood and began to attack the other dishes on the table. In the blink of an eye, the dishes on the table were all eaten by Xiao Chen. Lu Jinming didn't even eat a few mouthfuls before the food was gone. What af asterisk king pig? Lu Jinming cursed in his heart. He raised his chopsticks but he didn't know where to put them. He wanted to pick a piece of abalone in front of Xiao Chen, but he didn't have the face to do so. He could only put down his chopsticks and pick up the plate, preparing to fill a bowl of soy sauce fried rice on the table and eat some of the main course. Usually when eating a meal, the main course would be eaten first. Lu Jinming also had this habit, but there was nothing else to eat today. However, just as he picked up the plate, the bowl of soy sauce fried rice was directly taken away by Xiao Chen. Then Xiao Chen opened the bowl. In just 3 to 5 minutes, the bowl of soy sauce fried rice was finished. Lu Jinming's hand trembled as he held the plate. He suppressed the anger in his heart and put the plate on the table. Ma Jingang and the thin monkey-like man looked at each other. The Xiao Chen could eat too much, right? Skinny Monkey had seen Xiao Chen eat 4 steamed buns and a pile of steamed buns. Is this kid the reincarnation of a hungry ghost? It's really delicious. Are you guys full? Xiao Chen burped and asked comfortably. Xiao Chen discovered that after he became a cultivator, he could eat even more than before. Could it be that becoming a cultivator consumes more physical strength? I'm full. I ate very well. Lu Jinming had a stomach full of anger, but he had no way to vent it. After all, Qing Minjing was watching him. If he didn't eat his fill, wouldn't he lose face? Moreover, he wanted the outsiders to think that it was Xiao Chen's treat. Since it was Xiao Chen's treat, then the host would ask if the guest had eaten well. The guest would definitely say that he had eaten well. Well, that's fine. I'll pack the rest. Xiao Chen pointed to the 2 plates of seafood in front of him and said, "Waiter, give me a few lunch boxes. I want to pack." Okay, student. The waiter nodded and went to get the lunch boxes. Let's see how you pay the bill later. Lu Jinming clenched his teeth and patiently watched Xiao Chen pack. When Xiao Chen finally finished packing and put the lunch boxes into a plastic bag, Lu Jinming said to Xiao Chen, "Today, thank you for treating us. We'll go first." After listening to Lu Jinming's words, Xiao Chen's eyes narrowed slightly. At this point, he finally understood Lu Jinming's intention. Lu Jinming wanted to cheat him after the meal and make him pay for the meal. During the meal, Lu Jinming's eyes kept drifting in the direction of Miss Cheng. With Xiao Chen's powerful divine sense spiritual power, he could easily discover this. Therefore, Xiao Chen could be sure that Lu Jinming had taken a fancy to Qing Minjing, so he deliberately said some harsh words during the meal to make Lu Jinming helpless. This also confirmed that Lu Jinming didn't want to lose face in front of Qing Minjing. However, Lu Jinming wanted to pursue Qing Minjing. What does it have to do with me? Could it be that he knows that I'm Qing Minjing's former fiancé? But if he knew, I'm afraid he wouldn't speak like this. It seems that he still thinks that I'm from the mountains. Or, does he think that I'm a newcomer who can be bullied? Is there a sense of accomplishment in bullying me in front of Qing Minjing? Xiao Chen knew that when some prodigal young masters picked up girls, they liked to show off in front of them to gain their worship. However, there was no sense of accomplishment for Lu Jinming to bully a newcomer, right? As for letting Xiao Chen pay the bill, Xiao Chen didn't care. Although the Lu family was powerful, it was still a lot worse than the Chao family and the Qin family. It was just a newly emerged underworld family. Xiao Chen was now a cultivator. As long as his strength reached a certain level, what was there for him to be afraid of? The reason why the Lu family could be promoted to an aristocratic family was not because of their consecrator, a high-level martial artist. It was impossible for Xiao Chen to pay the bill. Xiao Chen didn't have so much money to buy it, but Xiao Chen believed that maybe the miss would be kind enough to pay for him. Then Xiao Chen would order a bunch of seafood for nothing. If the miss spent money, it would be deducted from his salary in the future. Therefore, while Xiao Chen was thinking about how to escape, his divine sense and spiritual force were also searching the entire cafeteria on the second floor. If it didn't work, he would have to beat them up. Of course, the premise was that there were no school teachers present. Xiao Chen didn't want to be expelled on the first day of transfer. However, after this search, Xiao Chen's eyes lit up. Swoosh. Just when Lu Jinming wasn't paying attention, Xiao Chen stood up all of a sudden. With lightning speed, he picked up the lunchbox on the table and walked towards the staircase. Not good, this kid wants to run. Lu Jinming reacted the fastest. Seeing Xiao Chen run, he immediately said to Ma Jinggang and the thin monkey-like man, "Stop him for me." After that, he also flew in the direction of Xiao Chen. However, to their surprise, Xiao Chen ran to the stairway of the cafeteria, but he didn't go down directly. Instead, he said with a smile, "Director Su, are you here to eat?" It's Student Xiao. Director Su saw Xiao Chen and a smile appeared on his face. It should be known that Cheng Zhongming was very efficient. After returning to the group, he called the school and said that with Director Su's help, the Cheng family gave the school a sponsorship fee, which made Director Su greatly praised in front of the principal. Although Xiao Chen didn't seem to have any background, he was Miss Cheng's follower. Maybe Xiao Chen's words represented Cheng Menjing's meaning. Therefore, Director Su had to greet Xiao Chen with a smile. "Xiao Chen, are you used to the new school? How is it? Are you getting along well with your classmates?" "Director Su, I'm very good. My classmates are all good to me, especially Lu Jinming. He treated me to a seafood feast and asked me to take it away," Xiao Chen said as he shook the bento bag in his hand and said to Director Su. "Lu Jinming?" Director Su was stunned. He knew very well what kind of person Lu Jinming was. Why would he take the initiative to treat Xiao Chen to a meal? At this time, Lu Jinming, Ma Gangmen and Skinny Monkey Man also ran over. Lu Jinming was about to lose his temper. Suddenly, he heard the conversation between Xiao Chen and Director Su. He suddenly froze and didn't know what to say. Treat Xiao Chen to a seafood feast? It seemed to be right, but Lu Jinming's purpose wasn't to treat Xiao Chen, but to blackmail Xiao Chen to achieve the purpose of teaching Xiao Chen a lesson. However, if Xiao Chen said that in front of Director Su, how could I blackmail him? If I told Director Su that it was Xiao Chen's treat instead of Lu Jinming's, Director Su had to believe it first. Xiao Chen looked like a poor man. How could he afford to treat this seafood feast? This lie was originally a very low level. With Director Su's IQ, he probably knew what was going on without thinking. Although Lu Jinming didn't care much about going to school, Lu Jinming's father and grandfather couldn't. Old Master Lu had a dream since he was a child. He was a rough man who mingled in the underworld. He wanted his son to become a refined scholar. Therefore, he named Lu Jinming's father Lu Siwen. However, in the past, the Lu family's power wasn't as good as it was now. Lu Siwen dropped out of school early, which made Old Master Lu very upset. When it came to Lu Jinming's generation, the Lu family became an aristocratic family. Both Old Master Lu and Lu Siwen hoped that the Lu family would enter the upper class. Therefore, they attached great importance to Lu Jinming's studies. They hoped that the Lu family could have a college student. Even if this college student didn't help the Lu family's business much, his reputation would be good. Otherwise, other aristocratic families would look down on you. When they saw the Lu family, they would say that they were rough people. Even if they were an aristocratic family, it was a low-level aristocratic family. Therefore, Lu Jinming was still very afraid of Director Su in school. If he was expelled, even if the Lu family could finally find the Shen family to plead for leniency, it wouldn't be glorious. Old Master Lu would probably beat Lu Jinming until he was disabled. It was too shameful. Old Master Lu couldn't afford to lose his face. "Director Su, you have always taught us to care about and unite our classmates." When Lu Jinming said this, his heart was bleeding, but he had no choice. "I saw that Xiao Chen came from the mountainous area and had never eaten seafood before, so I treated him to a meal." "Oh, Student Lu, you did well." Although Director Su wondered if Lu Jinming had taken the wrong medicine, after all, Lu Jinming did a good thing. He could only say, "I hope you can keep up the good work. If you can keep up, There will definitely be a place for you in this year's outstanding student. Ah, thank you, Director Su. I will keep up the good work. Lu Jinming said this, but in his heart he said, keep up the good work? Wouldn't I go bankrupt directly? And I'm going upstairs to eat. I'll leave first. You guys also go back to the classroom to study. After eating, don't wander around outside. You're in grade 12. Work hard and get into a good university. Director Su said. Got it, Director Su. Lu Jinming sighed. He knew that he couldn't teach Xiao Chen a lesson now, so he could only give up unwillingly. Student Lu, thank you for your big meal. When I become rich one day, I will spend my own money to eat. Xiao Chen and Lu Jinming waved their hands and turned to go downstairs. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.